Important update about YouTube playlists. Hey everyone. We've received many messages asking why our YouTube playlists aren't showing up. Do we create YouTube playlists? Yes, we absolutely do. So why can't you see them? Honestly, we're not sure. We've been in contact with YouTube support for several months now, but we still haven't received a clear answer or solution. After much discussion, our team has decided to take matters into our own hands. We believe the issue might be related to the number of playlists we've created on a single channel, possibly too many. Our solution? We're launching 2 additional YouTube channels, giving us a total of 3. This way, we can organize our audiobooks better and avoid the playlist visibility issue in the future. This change only affects our YouTube audience. If you're a patron supporter, you can still access all our audiobooks by visiting the collection menu on Patreon. Thanks so much for your time and continued support. Happy listening. He knew that Yujia would be a formidable kunoichi in the future. Despite this, Ren found the second year incredibly dull. In his first year, at least, he had weekly matches with Itachi, which kept things interesting. Now, however, there was no real challenge. The only memorable event this year was when the 6th year students were taken to visit Hidden Leaf Village's high-security prison, where death row criminals were held. The purpose of this visit was to condition their minds against bloodlust and killing intent, ensuring that when they entered real battles, they wouldn't freeze up in fear. Ren had heard rumors that, during wartime, academy students were required to kill as part of their training. However, after the end of the Third Great Ninja War, that policy had been abolished. Even so, with the war still fresh in memory, the village ensured that students were still exposed to the reality of bloodlust and violence to prepare them for the dangers ahead. When Ren first stepped into the prison, he immediately felt an overwhelming pressure. It was an entirely new sensation, unlike anything he had experienced before. His instincts screamed at him to turn back, but he forced himself to move forward. As they descended deeper into the prison, the air grew heavier, and the bloodlust became suffocating. Even though he had trained intensely for years, his steps faltered for the first time. But he clenched his fists and pushed forward. In the end, he made it to the lowest floor before finally returning. That night, he reflected on what he had felt inside the prison. He hated the feeling of being overwhelmed. He never wanted to experience it again, so from that day forward, he asked his father to unleash his own killing intent during their spars. Juichi, though slightly surprised by the request, agreed. It was a wise decision. Compared to the criminals in the prison, his father's bloodlust was in a completely different league. Training under such intense pressure, Ren quickly adapted to the sensation. He conditioned himself to stay calm and move fluidly, even under overwhelming bloodlust. During his second year, Ren had 4 shadow clones working in the basement almost all day. The only time they weren't training was when they dispelled and Ren didn't have the chance to make a new one. His intense use of the shadow clone jutsu genuinely worried Juichi, who eventually sat him down to explain the dangers of overusing the technique. But no matter how much his father warned him, Ren could only assure him verbally that he was being careful. Of course, he couldn't tell Juichi about the system's interference, which removed the usual risks associated with memory overload from shadow clones. Despite his father's concerns, this intense training had massively improved Ren's ninjutsu arsenal. He now knew multiple C-rank wind and earth jutsu, making his combat ability far more versatile. One of his most powerful new jutsu was the B-rank wind cutter jutsu, a technique that generated razor-sharp blades of wind either from a ninja tool like a fan or directly from the user's hands. Ren adapted this technique to work with his claws, and the combination was a perfect fit. Now, with a single slash, he could send blades of wind toward his enemies, slicing through objects from a distance. When he first practiced wind cutter, Ren was reminded of the Tempest Kick technique from One Piece, one of the 6 marine jutsus. Inspired, he tried to recreate it, but no matter how much he practiced, he couldn't replicate the effect. Logically, Tempest Kick was just another form of taijutsu using sheer leg strength to create blades of wind. In theory, it should have been possible to reproduce it with his enhanced physical attributes and wind affinity. Yet, he failed every time. After weeks of unsuccessful attempts, Ren reluctantly gave up. He concluded that the mechanics behind Tempest Kick were fundamentally different from traditional chakra-based taijutsu. Perhaps there was another principle at play that he hadn't discovered yet. Even though his experiment failed, training for it had greatly enhanced his physical strength. In that sense, it wasn't a waste of time. His earth-style jutsu had also advanced significantly, but unlike his wind techniques, he had never tested them in an actual fight. While he occasionally used wind jutsu in sparring or daily activities, his earth style remained a well-kept secret. For now, he intended to keep it that way. During his daily runs around Hidden Leaf Village, Ren occasionally crossed paths with a younger Might guy. The boy was exactly how he appeared in the future, loud, energetic, and completely absorbed in his idea of youth. Every time he ran past Ren, He flashed his iconic thumbs up and an impossibly wide grin, shouting something about the flames of youth before dashing off again. Ren couldn't help but find him interesting. He had read stories about Guy in his past life, and seeing him now, still so full of energy and passion, made him wonder, was this just his personality, or was it a way to cope? Guy was a shinobi, after all, and shinobi had to kill. Did he shout and smile like that to distract himself from the mental weight of taking lives on missions? Or was he genuinely this optimistic? Ren didn't dwell on it for too long. Even though Guy was a true monster in taijutsu, Ren had no desire to learn the 8 Gates jutsu. The risks were simply too high, and the drawbacks far outweighed the benefits. In Ren's mind, power without control was meaningless. If he couldn't fully control his strength, then that power wasn't truly his. That was a philosophy he would always stand by. Present time, today was the graduation exam for the 6th-year students, and Ren sat in his usual spot at the last bench, sandwiched between Eiji and Hitoshi. Over the course of the year, both of them had made significant progress. Eiji had reached level 29, and Hitoshi had also climbed to level 29. What caught Ren's attention, however, was that Hitoshi had originally been lagging behind Eiji by 2 levels. By the midterm exam, Eiji had maintained that lead, but within a single month, Hitoshi had caught up completely. That kind of sudden progress wasn't normal, which made Ren suspect that Hitoshi had received some kind of specialized training from the Ablaraim clan. As Ren was lost in thought, the classroom door slid open, and their instructor walked in. His name was Seiki Kano, a completely average-looking man with black hair and black eyes. Unlike his previous teacher, Yu Takata, there was nothing particularly intimidating or special about him. However, one difference stood out immediately. Ren could actually see his level. Seiki Kano, level 46, a Takebutsu Jonin, Ren thought. Ren could now observe people up to level 60, as his own level had risen to 40. Over the course of the past year, he had completely dedicated himself to physical training, choosing to ignore ninjutsu entirely. Even though his clones had continued working on jutsus, he hadn't attempted them himself even once. Instead, his focus had been purely on strengthening his body. This relentless training was the reason he had managed to reach level 40, the very limit of what a Chunin could achieve. As Seiki droned on at the front of the class, Ren tuned him out and pulled up his system panel, status panel, name, Ren Takahashi, level, 40, attribute, strength, 40, agility, 48, intelligence, 44, vitality, 48, chakra, 50, talents, improved chakra control, enhanced reflexes, Ganjutsu resistance, A rank, mastery panel, chakra control, 78%, advanced, fast fist taijutsu, 83%, advanced, shuriken jutsu, 87%, advanced, shadow clone mastery, 79%, advanced, wind style mastery, 75%, advanced, earth style mastery, 72%, intermediate. 3 available points. Ren looked over his stats with silent satisfaction. His physical attributes had soared, pushing him to the absolute peak of Chunin level strength. Even his mastery panel was looking solid. Shuriken jutsu, taijutsu, and chakra control had all reached advanced level, and his elemental jutsu were following closely behind. His shadow clone jutsu had also progressed significantly, meaning he could now sustain more clones for longer periods without excessive chakra drain. Ren felt deeply satisfied with his decision to stay in the academy for another year. If he had graduated early, his progress wouldn't have been nearly as explosive. At just 8 years old, he had already pushed his physical body to its absolute limit. Further intense training wouldn't yield much benefit, not until his body hit its growth spurt. For now, he decided he would ease up on pure physical training and instead focus on other aspects of combat that could enhance his overall strength. His ninjutsu arsenal needed refining, his strategy and adaptability needed sharpening, and most importantly, he needed real combat experience. Even though he would fight with Juichi frequently, he knew in his heart that although his father would push him to his limits, he would not actually kill him, so there was still a sense of safety. Just as these thoughts swirled in his mind, Seiki Kano started distributing the exam papers, his voice cutting through the classroom. The graduation exam begins now. Ren picked up his pencil. It was time to officially become a Genin. Chapter 33, the first dispatch squad. The dimly lit office of the 3rd Hokage was filled with nearly 24 shinobi, all clad in standard Hidden Leaf Village-issued uniforms. 10 Jonin stood in front of the Hokage and the Jonin commander in an orderly formation, while several Chunin and Takebutsu Jonin stood at the back, awaiting their assignments. Hiruzen Saratobi, the 3rd Hokage, gazed out of the window, his smoke pipe in hand, watching over the village as he began to speak. Once again, the time has come for young fledglings to leave the greenhouse we have provided for them. It will be your duty to ensure they are prepared for the challenges ahead, so that they may grow into the pillars that will support our village, our home, The hidden leaf. Some of them are exceptional, others a bit less so, but remember, these are the shinobi who will one day stand where you now stand. Do not dismiss this task as just another mission. He finished with a light chuckle, the usual warmth in his voice masking the heavy burden of leadership. A few jonin smiled lightly, while most maintained their neutral expressions. Seeing that Hiruzen had finished, Shikaku Nara, the jonin commander, stepped forward, yawning as he unrolled a large scroll in his hands. This year, we have 120 graduates, which makes the squad assignments easier. As always, the 10 of you, he gestured toward the 10 jonin in front, will be responsible for the elite class. The rest of you will handle the regular classes. No one objected, as this was how it had always been done. The elite class would undergo further training under jonin instructors, but only those who passed their first test would receive further training till they reached the chunin rank. The regular students, however, would continue to operate in four-man squads until their team leaders deemed them ready for the chunin exams or if they were transferred to the geinin reserves. Seeing no questions, Shikaku began assigning squads, starting with the regular students. As each team was announced, the designated leader stepped forward, received their students' names, and flickered away. They did not wait for the team number since only the elite teams were granted team numbers, the rest were to operate under the name of their team leaders. Once the regular class assignments were completed, only the jonin instructors for the elite class remained. Shikaku exhaled slowly, rubbing his temple. The elite class this year was not up to par, except for the top 5. You are free to send them back to the reserves if their performance is unsatisfactory. His voice was neutral, making it clear that he had little expectation of most of them. Seeing no questions, Shikaku continued, calling out the squads in order. Akihito Toma, Reiji Kurama, Emi Hato, and Takeshi Yamamoto. You will form Team 17, assuming they pass. Akihito nodded, already expecting that his squad would be made up of those ranked at the bottom and the Rookie of the Year. However, his eyes narrowed slightly when he did not hear the name of the first-place graduate. He was about to ask when another jonin with black hair tied in a ponytail spoke up in a neutral tone. "He's with me." The response was simple, but firm. Akihito glanced at the man, recognizing him, and nodded in understanding before flickering away. Shikaku didn't even pause at the interruption and continued announcing the squads till there were only 2 jonins were left. Chojuro Akimuki, Eiji Nakamura, Shin Saratobi, and Akemi Hyuga. You will form Team 2, if they pass. Chojuro glanced briefly at Hiruzen, exchanged a small nod with Shikaku, and flickered away. Only 1 jonin remained. Before Shikaku could continue, Hiruzen spoke. Utakata, you will be responsible for the top 3. A brief silence followed. Your squad will have you as the healer and support. The first and second place graduates, Ren Takahashi and Yuja Yuzuki, will serve as offensive specialists. Hitoshi Aburame will be the team scout. Your team will be the first dispatch squad of the year, the Team 1. They are all combat capable, so get them ready soon. Hiruzen took a slow drag from his pipe as he finished speaking. Utakata, standing as stoic as ever, gave a single nod. Understood, Lord Hokage. Then, without another word, he flickered away. Now, only Shikaku and Hiruzen remained. Shikaku sighed, stretching slightly before muttering, how many teams do you think will actually last this year? Hiruzen gazed out at the village silently for a moment before responding. 4, at most. Even if we include Team 1. Shikaku simply hummed in agreement, rolling up the now empty scroll. Hiruzen took another long drag from his pipe and started doing paperwork once again. Location Academy. The elite classroom of the academy buzzed with excitement as the newly graduated geinin showed off their shiny leaf headbands to one another, each flexing their symbol of achievement. The graduation exam had concluded the previous day, and today, the students had been summoned to receive their final results, headbands, and team assignments. Ren sat at his usual seat, turning the headband over in his hands. The results were predictable. He had secured the top rank and was officially the Rookie of the Year. However, what caught him off guard was the second-place ranking. He had expected it to go to Eiji or Hitoshi, but instead, it was Yuja Yuzuki. While she had occasionally won against the 2 of them, her win ratio was not in her favor, and yet she had still managed to claim second place. The ranking system had been based on 2 factors: the written exam and a tournament-style battle that determined the final placements. Yuja had beaten Hitoshi, and Hitoshi later fought Eiji and won, resulting in an even score among the 3. Ultimately, her higher written exam scores must have pushed her ahead. Ren finished inspecting the headband and tied it securely to his forehead, then turned to Eiji, grinning. How does it look? Eiji, still grumbling over his 4th-place ranking, barely glanced at him and muttered, like a headband. What else would it look like? Before Ren could fire back a response, the door slid open, and Seiki Kano entered the room, his usual calm smile in place. Congratulations to all of you. As of today, you are officially Shinobi of the Hidden Leaf, he began, his voice carrying over the noise, quickly silencing the room. From now on, we are all comrades, and I expect you to support not just your teammates, but also any fellow Hidden Leaf Village Shinobi you meet on the battlefield. His gaze swept across the class before he continued. Now, I will begin announcing your teams. The room held its breath as the moment they had all been waiting for arrived. Team 1. Ren Takahashi, Yujao Yuzuki, and Hitoshi Aburame. Your Jonin-sensei will be Utakata Ito. A brief silence followed before a wave of murmurs spread through the class. The top 3 students were all placed together, a decision that wasn't common. Most had expected them to be split up to balance the teams, but instead, they had been concentrated into a single squad. Ren was equally surprised, though not because of his teammates, he was fine with them, but because of their sensei. Utakata-sensei? Ren thought, blinking in surprise. His old academy instructor? Not only that, but Utakata had also been his father's former teammate. He had assumed the village would assign them to a random powerful jonin, but instead, they had been given someone Ren already knew. Before he could dwell on it further, Saiki continued. Team 2 Eiji Nakamura, Akemi Hyuga, and Shin Saratobi. Your Jonin-sensei will be Chojiro Akimuki. Akemi was 5th in the overall class ranking and Shin was ranked 9th. Hearing Eiji's name, Ren glanced toward him, meeting his gaze before the two of them low-fived. Although they weren't on the same team, they had both been assigned solid squads, and that was enough to make them happy. By the time Saiki finished announcing all the teams, the classroom was filled with hushed discussions and excited whispers. The teacher raised a hand, signaling for silence. Your Jonin-sensei will be arriving soon to take you. I expect you all to behave accordingly. Just as he finished speaking, the door slid open, and the first to enter was Utakata. Without wasting time, he said in his usual calm, emotionless tone, Team 1, with me. Ren, Hitoshi, and Yujao immediately stood up. Yujao bid a quick farewell to a group of girls who were excitedly talking to her, while Ren high-fived Eiji before heading toward the front of the classroom. As the three gathered in front of Utakata, he gave them a single order. Training ground 1. 5 minutes. And with that, he flickered away. Without hesitation, Ren and the others vanished from the classroom as well, flickering after him. In the first training ground, Utakata stood calmly, arms crossed, his neutral expression unwavering as Ren landed in front of him, steady and composed. A minute later, Hitoshi and Yujao arrived simultaneously, taking their positions beside Ren without a word. Once the three of them were assembled, Utakata spoke in his usual monotone voice. My name is Utakata Ito. My specialty is healing and water-style ninjutsu. He then gave a slight nod, signaling for Yujao to go next. Stepping forward slightly, Yujao introduced herself. My name is Yujao Yuzuki. I specialize in kenjutsu and lightning-style ninjutsu. Next was Ren, who spoke confidently. My name is Ren Takahashi. I specialize in taijutsu and wind-style ninjutsu. Finally, Hitoshi stepped forward, his voice calm and quiet like always. My name is Hitoshi Aburame. I specialize in Aburame clan techniques, scouting, and fire-style ninjutsu. Utakata stood with his arms crossed, his sharp gaze passing over the three new geinin before him. The three of you are smart enough to understand the composition of this team, I assume? Ren, Yujao, and Hitoshi nodded without hesitation. Their squad was well-balanced: 2 combat specialists, a scout, and a healer. The only unusual aspect was that Utakata himself, a powerful jonin, was assigned as their medic and support. It was clear that this was no ordinary team, it was a specialized unit, designed for efficiency. Seeing their understanding, Utakata continued. Our squad is designated as the first emergency dispatch team for any missions below A rank. This is only after you are deemed ready though. Hence, we are known as Team 1. This training ground 1 is also assigned to us because of its close proximity to the village gates. That way, we can be deployed at the earliest notice. He paused briefly, giving them a moment to process the information. Any questions? All three shook their heads, fully grasping the importance of their assignment. Utakata nodded slightly before continuing. Traditionally, Jonin-sensei conduct an initial test for their assigned students. Only those who pass are allowed to continue as genin and those who fail are sent back to the academy. However, I see no value in testing the three of you. Your abilities have already been proven. Ren, Yujao, and Hitoshi listened attentively as Utakata's voice turned stern. That being said, do not take this as blind approval. If I see any problems within this team, whether it be a lack of discipline, poor teamwork, or incompetence, I will terminate this squad immediately and revoke your genin status. All three genin nodded and Utakata then gave his final order. Meet me at the Hokage building in 5 minutes. We need to finalize the paperwork. And with that, he flickered away, vanishing in an instant. Without a word, Ren, Yujao, and Hitoshi followed suit, flickering toward the Hokage building. Chapter 34, Getting Pegged by an Old Man with Two Others, Part 3. In front of the Hokage Tower, Team 1 stood as their Jonin instructor. Utakata spoke in his usual calm yet firm voice. First, we'll get your photos taken, individual shots as well as a team photo. After that, we'll submit your ninja registration forms to the Hokage. The three Genin responded with a unified yes, sensei, and followed Utakata into the building. They soon reached a small studio set up on a balcony, where an old man sat cleaning his camera. Upon seeing them enter, the photographer gave a welcoming smile. Ah, the first team of the year. Come, let's start with the little girl. For a brief moment, Ren noticed Yujao's grip tighten around her sword when the old man said little girl. The subtle reaction vanished as quickly as it came, and she stepped forward, standing in front of the camera with her usual composed demeanor. All right, smile, the old man instructed. Yujao gave a faint smile, and with a soft click, her photo was taken. Ren went next, flashing a small grin before his photo was snapped. Finally, Hitoshi stepped forward, his face completely impassive, hidden behind the high collar of his Aburame clan attire. The photographer didn't even bother asking him to smile, seemingly well aware of the Aburame clan's stoic nature. With their individual photos taken, it was now time for the team photo. Utakata stood behind them, resting his right hand on Ren's shoulder and his left on Hitoshi's, while Yujao stood in the center. With a final click, the photo was taken in one shot. Once the photos were developed, each of them received a copy. Ren glanced at his own, his eyes widening slightly in surprise. Utakata was smiling. It was a barely noticeable, faint smile, but it was there. Ren, who had spent an entire year under Utakata's strict and expressionless teaching, had never seen the man smile, not even once. Intrigued, he turned to look at Utakata, but by then, the Jonin's face had returned to its usual poker expression. Fill out your forms. We need to submit them before the office gets too crowded, Utakata stated, shifting the focus back to the task at hand. The three Genin grabbed the necessary forms from the table and filled them out. It was just basic details like their full name, age, clan affiliation, if any, and areas of specialization. Once completed, Team 1 proceeded toward the Hokage's office. Utakata knocked once and waited. Come in, came the voice from inside. As they entered, Ren immediately spotted Hiruzen Sarutobi seated at his desk, his expression warm and welcoming. Without hesitation, the four of them dropped to one knee and greeted in unison, Lord Hokage. Rise. As they stood, Ren's gaze instinctively drifted around the office. His eyes scanned the walls, where the framed portraits of all four Hokages hung. From the legendary first Hokage, Hashirama Senju, to the most recent, the late fourth Hokage, Minato Namikaze, and of course the best, the second Hokage Dogirama Senju. His thoughts were interrupted by Hiruzen's soft chuckle. Ho ho, I suppose I should have expected you to be the first, the Hokage mused, looking directly at Utakata. Well, I trust you will handle them well. Utakata gave a small nod, offering no further words. Hiruzen's gaze then shifted to the three new Genin before him. Ren could feel Yujao and Hitoshi stiffen slightly under the weight of the third Hokage's watchful eyes. The man was not just the leader of Hidden Leaf Village, but one of the most powerful shinobi alive, carrying the title of the second god of shinobi. When Ren's eyes met Hiruzen's, he simply smiled. A calm, composed expression, free of nervousness. All right, kids, hand me your forms. The three Genin stepped forward and placed their ninja registration forms on the desk. Hiruzen picked them up and signed them swiftly, stamping each with his official Hokage seal. An Anbu operative flickered into the room, silently taking the documents from the Hokage's desk before vanishing just as quickly. With that, Team 1's official registration was complete. After receiving a light motivational speech from the third Hokage, Team 1 was officially dismissed. As soon as they exited the Hokage Tower, Utakata turned to them and instructed in his usual calm yet commanding voice, Training Ground 1. 5 minutes. Without waiting for a response, he flickered away. The three Genin exchanged brief glances before wordlessly following the order, flickering towards the first training ground at top speed. At Training Ground 1, Utakata was already there, standing motionless, his usual stoic expression in place. The moment all three Genin arrived, he began speaking. As the first dispatch squad, your stamina takes precedence. Our missions will require us to reach destinations as quickly as possible, and you all possess excellent stamina for your age. You may continue your individual stamina training as before, but if I notice any decline, all training and missions will be halted until you are back in shape. Understood? Yes, Sensei. They responded in unison. Yuikata nodded and got straight to the point. We won't waste time today. The three of you will fight me together so that you can learn to adjust to each other's combat styles. Today's fight will be straightforward. Come at me with everything you have. We'll begin when you're ready. The three gained and jumped back in sync, exchanging a brief glance before huddling together to strategize. Without hesitation, Ren broke the silence. As the two of you already know, I'm fast, skilled in taijutsu, and I specialize in wind-style jutsu. What about you two? His sudden willingness to share his abilities was deliberate, as it was meant to encourage the other two to do the same without hesitation. Seeing Ren openly disclose his strengths, Yuzhou followed suit. I excel in kenjutsu, and I also know some offensive lightning jutsu. However, I can't cast them instantly. With both sets of eyes now on Hitoshi, the Aburame didn't delay. I don't have any insects strong enough to pose a threat to a Jonin yet, but if given an opportunity, I can plant poisonous insects on him as a distraction. I also know fire-style jutsu. With all their abilities laid out, the three of them fell into deep thought, each trying to formulate a strategy. After a moment, Yuzhou spoke up first. We can use the insects as a feint, make them appear to be our final attack, while secretly preparing the real finishing blow. Hitoshi nodded in agreement, but Ren quickly added to the plan. Alright, you two create a distraction. Hitoshi, you time your attack while Yuzhou executes a direct strike. That should provide me with the perfect opening for the final attack. But Yuzhou, make sure to drop your sword somewhere after your strike. At the last part, Yuzhou narrowed her eyes slightly. She didn't like the idea of being unarmed, but she still nodded. Both Yuzhou and Hitoshi had no objections to Ren leading the final attack. Given that he was the strongest among them, it made logical sense. More importantly, his plan was sound. Once their strategy was finalized, Yuzhou turned towards Yuikata, her voice steady. Sensei, we're ready. The moment Yuzhou called out that they were ready, Yuikata gave a small nod. Begin. Like a ghost, he flickered forward, appearing right in their midst before they could even move. His fist lashed out at Yuzhou first, forcing her to duck, before he smoothly shifted his attack to Ren. Ren barely raised his forearm in time, blocking the punch but sliding back from the force. Hitoshi tried to counter with a kick, but Yuikata caught his leg midair and flung him backward. Ren and Yuzhou immediately dashed forward to engage in close combat. Their strikes were fast and precise, but Yuikata blocked or dodged with fluid ease. He deflected Yuzhou's palm strike, sidestepped Ren's kick, and forced them back with a low sweeping leg kick. Yuzhou gritted her teeth and unsheathed her sword in one fluid motion. Ren flexed his fingers, revealing the sharp retractable claws from the gloves. The real fight had begun. Ren lunged first, slashing at Yuikata with quick, unpredictable movements while Yuzhou flanked his side, her sword a blur of silver. Yuikata parried both effortlessly, moving like flowing water. Hitoshi took the opportunity to weave hand seals, sending small waves of insects toward their sensei, but Yuikata barely even acknowledged them. The moment the bugs got close, a gust of wind from Ren's great breakthrough meant for Yuikata sent them scattering. Yuikata took a step back as a fireball from Hitoshi burned through the air, but he dodged it with a flicker, appearing behind the Aburame in an instant. Before he could strike, Ren intercepted, his claws slicing forward. The sharp clank of metal against metal echoed as Yuikata blocked with a kunai and pushed him back again. Lightning crackled in the air as Yuzhou launched a lightning slash from the side. Ren followed up with a C-rank wind blast, the combined attack forcing Yuikata to flicker away. They had finally made him move. They kept up the pressure. Ren's Wenjutsu and Taijutsu kept Yuikata occupied, Yuzhou's sword was relentless, and Hitoshi threw fireballs whenever he saw an opening. Yet, no matter how much they attacked, they couldn't break through Yuikata's defenses. He was calm, composed, and barely looked like he was trying. Then, everything changed. In a single instant, Yuikata's fist buried into Ren's stomach. The impact was brutal. Ren felt his breath leave his lungs as he was sent flying backward, crashing into the dirt. His vision blurred for a moment. Yuikata flickered. Before Hitoshi could react, their sensei appeared in front of him, attacking mercilessly. Hitoshi barely managed to block the first strike, but the second and third sent him staggering back. Yuzhou rushed in, her blade sparking with lightning. Now! She shouted. Yuikata spun, blocking her sword with a kunai just as insects swarmed his face. It was the perfect opening, but instead of panicking, he simply pushed Yuzhou's sword out of her grip and saw Yuzhou adjust the position slightly so it drops behind him. Then, in a move too fast for them to process, he ducked at an inhuman speed, letting the insects sail over him. His fists shot forward, one aimed at Yuzhou, the other at Hitoshi. Before his punches could connect, a sharp whoosh of air made him pause. Ren was behind him, holding Yuzhou's discarded sword. The blade was glowing with wind chakra, its edge humming with sharpness that could slice through steel. A direct hit would be lethal. Utakata still struck Yujao and Hitoshi, sending them flying backward, but even as he did, he bent his neck in an unnatural angle and spat a high-pressure stream of water directly at Ren's hand. Ren's arm jerked back, his posture breaking, but at that moment, his left hand claws extended with blades of wind. They struck Utakata squarely and then smoke. Utakata's body vanished. Ren blinked. A shadow clone. His arms fell to his sides, and he collapsed onto his back, staring at the sky. The real Utakata dropped down from a nearby tree, his expression calm as he looked at his three exhausted students. "You three did extremely well for your first fight together," he said, his voice carrying a rare note of approval. Even if it was just a clone, its strength wasn't low. Without another word, he flickered beside them and picked them up one by one, placing them with their backs against the tree. Once they were seated, he continued, the idea of a triple-layered attack was well executed. First, the lightning sword strike, then the insect swarm, and finally, the wind sword to cover up the claw attack. I have to say, I'm impressed. Utakata paused when he noticed Yujao and Hitoshi both staring at Ren, who was rubbing his head absent-mindedly. What? Utakata asked, raising an eyebrow. Yujao was the one who spoke up. It's just that. The wind sword was supposed to be the final attack. We wouldn't have been able to dispel your clone, but Ren suddenly followed up with that claw strike. It was unexpected. Utakata turned his gaze to Ren, who shrugged before explaining, my last attack was supposed to be the wind sword, but I saw the perfect moment. As soon as I thought about attacking, my body just moved on its own. For a moment, Utakata simply stared at him, his eyes studying Ren in silence. Then, he gave a small nod. Well, it doesn't matter. The three of you did well, but we still need to make sure your attacks don't interfere with each other. He straightened up and dusted off his vest. Alright, you're dismissed for today. Gather here tomorrow at 8 a.m. With that, he flickered away, leaving the three Geinin alone. A brief silence settled between them before Yujao suddenly spoke. How about we go eat something? Sure, Ren agreed without hesitation. Hitoshi gave a small nod, and the three of them walked off together. Chapter 35, Ikiraku Meetings and Assistants. Ramen stand at Ikiraku Ramen. Ren and his teammates centered together, deciding on ramen since it was a favorite food among most people in Hidden Leaf Village. Taki glanced up from behind the counter, and upon spotting Ren, greeted him warmly. Oh, Ren-kun. You're here. Congrats on becoming a Geinin. You and your friends get a bowl on the house. He smiled, noticing Ren's headband and the two people standing beside him. Ren grinned. He had been visiting Ikiraku Ramen at least once a week since arriving in this world 2 years ago, so he had naturally built a good relationship with Taki. Thanks, Taki-san. These are Yujao and Hitoshi, my teammates, he said, introducing them. Taki nodded before glancing around. I don't see your sensei. Is he on the way? Just as Yujao was about to answer, a sudden whoosh filled the air, and Utakata appeared behind the three. Good. I was expecting to see you spend some time together to get to know each other even if I wasn't here. You didn't disappoint me. Sit. I'll treat you. He said all this in one breath and then signaled Taki with his eyes, a silent message that made the older man chuckle. Well, since your sensei is treating you, I'll hold on to that free bowl for another time, Taki said, shaking his head lightly as he moved behind the counter. The three young Geinin sat down, feeling as if they had somehow passed an unexpected test from their teacher. Silence lingered for a moment before Yujao turned to Ren and asked, How old are you? Ren blinked. He had expected something more meaningful, but he still answered, 8. She turned to Hitoshi, who simply responded, 9. I'm 10, she finished, and once again, silence settled over them. None of the four were particularly talkative, so casual small talk wasn't something that came naturally. Taki soon returned with 4 steaming bowls and placed them in front of them. I remember when your sensei and your father used to come here with their team, he remarked, pointing at Ren. Yujao turned toward Ren, who nodded. Yeah, my dad told me in my first year that he was teammates with Utakata-sensei, he confirmed before continuing to eat his noodles. Taki then glanced at Yujao. How's Shinrai? I haven't seen him in quite a while. You know my dad? Yujao asked, a bit surprised. Of course. Shinrai used to get forced by his friends to pay for their meals all the time, so he's quite memorable, Taki said with a chuckle. Yujao blushed and quickly stuffed her mouth with noodles, mumbling, he's fine. Taki then turned to Hitoshi, but knowing the Aburame clan's reserved nature, he didn't push him into conversation. Instead, he simply nodded, and Hitoshi gave a silent nod in return before continuing his meal. Once they finished, Utakata paid the bill and stood up. Training Ground 1. 8 a.m., he instructed before flickering away, leaving the three Geinin to process the day's events. Late at night, Ren once again found himself at Ikiraku Ramen, this time accompanied by his father. As they stepped inside, Tuki glanced up from behind the counter and greeted them with a warm smile. "Oh, Ren-kun, twice in a day? And this time with your father, I see." Ren nodded, and Juichi chuckled. "Hey, Tuki-san. Just wanted to celebrate this brat becoming a genin." He reached over and ruffled Ren's hair, making the boy scowl slightly. "Haha, sit down. I'll bring you something good." Tuki laughed and disappeared into the kitchen. As they settled into their seats, Juichi glanced at Ren and asked, "So, how does it feel to be a genin?" Ren shrugged. "Doesn't feel any different. Just an extra headband. But it's nice to not be stuck in the academy all day." Juichi chuckled. "You'll feel it soon enough when the missions start," he said knowingly. Before Ren could respond, Tuki returned with steaming bowls of ramen, setting them down with a satisfied grin. They both dug in, enjoying the warmth of the food, when Ren suddenly asked, "Hey, Dad. Can you get someone you know as your Jonin sensei?" Juichi glanced at him, then nodded. "Yeah, if a Jonin volunteers to take a student, the village usually allows it." He paused, then continued, "It's not really a big deal. Hidden Leaf Village already has a shortage of Jonins willing to train genin squads, so if someone steps up, the village agrees. The only exception is for direct family members." Ren nodded in understanding. "So, did you Dakata-sensei volunteer to train us?" Juichi shook his head. "No. The village assigned him your squad, and he didn't object." Something about the way he spoke made Ren pause. His father had turned his face slightly to the side, avoiding his gaze. Ren could tell Juichi wasn't telling him the whole story. Maybe he had asked Utakata to take him as a student, but he decided not to press the matter further. They continued eating, finishing their last bowls in silence, when Juichi suddenly turned to Ren with a more serious expression. "All right, listen up, kid." His tone was firm, and Ren immediately straightened. "You might not feel anything different now, even after becoming a genin, but remember this: the moment you put on the headband, you became a shinobi." Ren remained silent as Juichi continued. "When an enemy sees a kid as young as you wearing a Hidden Leaf Village headband, they won't underestimate you. In fact, they'll see you as an even bigger threat than an adult ninja. Do you know why?" Ren shook his head slightly. "Because anyone who can earn that headband at such a young age is undoubtedly a genius. They'll assume you're dangerous. So what will they do?" Juichi leaned in slightly. "They'll make sure to eliminate you first. You'll have a teacher for now, but he won't always be there to help you. If something goes wrong, you'll be on your own. That's why you must always be cautious. Always take every mission seriously, no matter how easy it seems. And most importantly," Juichi tapped his temple, "always listen to what your gut tells you. A shinobi's instincts are their greatest weapon." There was a heavy silence between them. Then Juichi exhaled, his expression softening slightly. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a necklace, shaped like a flame, and placed it in Ren's palm. "This was given to me by my father when I became a genin," he said, his voice laced with nostalgia. "It's been my lucky charm ever since." Ren stared at the necklace, tracing its edges with his fingers. Juichi gave a small chuckle. "During the Ninetales attack, the string on this broke. I knew it was a bad sign, but even then, I couldn't stop." "Do you know why?" Ren looked up, shaking his head. Juichi smiled, though there was something bittersweet in his expression. "Because there were people I cared about who were in danger. And even if I knew I might die, I couldn't just stand by and do nothing. If I could help, even a little, then it was worth it." Ren held on to his father's words, letting them sink deep into his heart. Juichi patted his shoulder. "Even though I told you to always trust your instincts, there might come a time when you'll have to ignore them for the sake of something or someone you can't abandon. And when that time comes..." He gave Ren a knowing look. "At least you'll be able to live without regrets." Ren clenched the necklace in his hand. Juichi let out a sigh, then ruffled Ren's hair again, breaking the tension. "All right, enough serious talk. Get going, brat. I've got something to take care of." Ren stood up holding the necklace and walked away after glancing at his father. Utakata slipped onto the seat beside Juichi, his movements so quiet that most wouldn't have noticed, but Juichi didn't even lift his head as he spoke. "So, how were they?" "Better than I expected," Utakata answered, his tone as neutral as ever. "For their first time fighting together, they were unexpectedly good. They even managed to dispel my clone." Juichi let out a laugh, slamming his thigh. "I told you they'd be good. The old man personally picked the other two." Utakata nodded slightly. "I thought he would pair Ren with Eiji Nakamura, but I didn't expect him to form the first dispatch team when one of its members is still in active duty." His gaze shifted towards Juichi, his meaning clear. Juichi picked up the cup of juice that Taki had placed in front of him at some point, taking a slow sip before answering. "The team got an urgent mission about the snake's whereabouts." He paused, meeting Utakata's eyes. They've been unreachable for 2 months. 1 more month, and they'll be declared dead. Utakata fell silent, his fingers lightly tapping against the counter. He finally let out a quiet sigh. Looks like I've been out of touch with village affairs for a while. Juichi didn't comment on that, instead shifting the topic with a smirk. So, how does it feel to be leading a team? I always knew I wasn't suited to be an instructor, but you? The old man had his eyes on you as a teacher the moment you made Jonin. Utakata glanced at Juichi, then exhaled lightly. I considered taking a team under me for a while. But after what happened to his team, my motivation faded. His voice was steady, but there was something unreadable in his eyes. But when I saw your boy during his first spar, he reminded me of him so much. So I decided whether I became his Jonin instructor or not, I would train him after the academy. Juichi's casual expression darkened instantly, his voice turning cold. He might have similarities, but don't shape my kid as you see fit just because you feel guilty. The air between them grew heavy, but Utakata merely met Juichi's gaze without flinching. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then, Tuki placed another drink in front of them, cutting through the tension like a silent mediator. Juichi finally leaned back, exhaling through his nose. You're not wrong, Utakata finally said, breaking the silence. But I won't force anything on him. The boy's already walking his own path. All I can do is make sure he survives it. Juichi stared at him for a moment longer before scoffing, picking up his drink again. Humphrey. Just don't screw it up. The tense atmosphere was abruptly broken by Tuki's sudden laughter. You know, Juichi, he said, amusement lacing his voice, Utakata here actually forgot to treat his team or do any real bonding with them. And when he finally remembered, he turned it into a test to see if the students would bond on their own. Juichi, instantly catching on to Tuki's intentions, scoffed and smirked at Utakata. Seriously? You turned your own forgetfulness into some grand plan? That's the most Utakata thing I've ever heard. He leaned back, clearly enjoying himself as he continued. What was next? If they didn't bond, were you going to give them another test to see if they could figure out teamwork without a sensei? Utakata remained as expressionless as ever, but if one looked closely, they'd notice the faintest twitch at the corner of his lips, just enough to betray the fact that he wasn't entirely unaffected by the teasing. Tuki chuckled again, shaking his head. Some things never change. Chapter 36, Bug fixing in the name of updates is a punishable offense. At the same time, in Ren's home, he sat on his bed, absent-mindedly fiddling with the fire-shaped necklace his father had given him. The cool metal rested against his fingertips as his thoughts drifted. Juichi's words from earlier echoed in his mind about instinct, about duty, and about finding something worth risking everything for. Ren sighed, his grip tightening slightly around the pendant before finally slipping it around his neck. He leaned back, staring at the ceiling and thought, will I ever find something like father said? Ren stared at the ceiling for a while before shaking his head. There's no use thinking about it. Pushing his thoughts aside, he turned his attention to the system rewards. This time, he had received 2 notifications. Opening them one by one, the first message appeared. Congratulations, user, for graduating the Academy as Rookie of the Year. Rewards, all stats +1 3 advanced mastery points, each point increases mastery in the advanced stage by 2%. Ren wasn't surprised by these rewards. Since achieving the top spot in his class hadn't been much of a challenge, the rewards weren't extravagant either. Still, extra mastery points were always useful, especially at higher levels. Next, he opened the second reward. Congratulations, user, for becoming a gain-in. Rewards, 10 special Jonin level points, a chance to spin the wheel and obtain a major talent system update available. Please notify when the user is ready. The update will take 1 minute. Ren's mood instantly improved. The stat points were great, but the real prizes were the major talent wheel and the system update. He set the update aside for now and focused on the talent wheel. Previously, he had gained improved chakra control and enhanced reflexes from the minor talent wheel, and both had been incredibly useful. Now that he had a chance at a major talent, his anticipation grew. Opening the wheel, he saw that unlike last time, where the options were supplementary skills, this time, they were all primary disciplines like ninjutsu, taijutsu, ganjutsu, sensing, fuinjutsu, and more. He spun the wheel and watched as it slowed down, the indicator ticking across the sections until it finally landed on fuinjutsu. A system message rang in his ears. Congratulations, user, for obtaining a major talent in fuinjutsu. Your fuinjutsu talents are comparable to a low-level genius of the Uzumaki clan. Additional reward, +5 intelligence points. Ren's eyes widened in excitement. Fuinjutsu. This was perfect. His ninjutsu and taijutsu talents were already great, and he had no real interest in ganjutsu, especially with his Genjutsu resistance skill. Sensing talent would have been useful, but it wasn't urgent. His instincts were already exceptional. But Fuinjutsu? It had endless potential, from sealing weapons and jutsu to defensive barriers and even time-space techniques. Even though the system described his talent as comparable to a low-level Uzumaki genius, that was still an incredible boost. On top of that, he also received +5 intelligence as a bonus. With his high intelligence and shadow clones for grinding, he could make rapid progress in Fuinjutsu in no time. Ren took a deep breath to calm himself and turned his attention to the system update. Will my previous points and rewards be affected by the update? He asked. Negative. Alright, update the system. A loading screen appeared, and exactly 1 minute later, a notification popped up. Update complete. Ren opened his status panel to check the changes. As expected, there weren't any major alterations, more like bug fixes and enhancements. However, there were some notable improvements in the interface. Status panel, name, Ren Takahashi, level, 41, health points, 4,900 out of 4,900, chakra points, 5,100 out of 5,100, attribute, strength, 41, +1, agility, 49, +1, intelligence, 50, +1, +5, vitality, 49, +1, chakra, 51, +1, available points, 10 special Jonin level points, can be converted to 5 Jonin level points, talents, improved chakra control, enhanced reflexes, Genjutsu resistance, A rank, Fuinjutsu, major talent, mastery panel, chakra control, 78%, advanced, fast fist taijutsu, 83%, advanced, shuriken jutsu, 87%, advanced, shadow clone mastery, 79%, advanced, wind style mastery, 75%, advanced, earth style mastery, 72%, intermediate, mastery points, 3 intermediate level points, 3 advanced level points, ninja panel, new, ninjutsu, 53 out of 100, taijutsu, 48 out of 100, Genjutsu, 13, Fuinjutsu, 1 out of 100, Ren's eyes sparkled as he analyzed the changes. His stats had increased from the Rookie of the Year rewards, and his HP and chakra points were now visible, making it easier to track his stamina and chakra reserves. The ninja menu was a new thing. It looked like it displays a user's proficiency in a given discipline. If that was the case, then his ninjutsu were already comparable to a jonin, and his taijutsu was also fast reaching the jonin level. His genjutsu was barely comparable to a genin, and fuinjutsu was just starting. Seeing the new ninja menu, he asked the system, can I increase the level items in ninja menu by using system points? He had these questions because if possible that would be a truly great. But his hopes were squashed when the system notification rang, negative. The ninja menu only displays user level in the item included and cannot be increased using points. Ren shrugged his shoulders, he wasn't overly optimistic anyway. As Ren was analyzing the changes in his system, another notification rang. Congratulations, user, for getting your first attribute in the Jonin level. Reward, 1 Jonin level attribute point. With this, I now have 6 Jonin level points, Ren thought. Without hesitation, he allocated 5 points to vitality, which also increased his chakra by 2 points, and placed the remaining 1 point into chakra directly. Vitality 54, chakra 53, chakra 54, the notifications rang in his ears as his vitality and chakra were once again equal. It was fortunate that his chakra increased both gradually and instantly, otherwise, a sudden surge would be difficult to explain. Like the intermediate mastery points, he decided to save his advanced mastery points as well. They were incredibly rare, so he would only use them when absolutely necessary. With his rewards settled, Ren closed the system and lay down to sleep. Tomorrow, I start training with my team. And begin learning Fuinjutsu. He had checked the library before, but the academy student section contained nothing related to Fuinjutsu. Now that he was a genin, he could access more advanced materials. He planned to send a shadow clone to the genin section of the library to look for anything useful. Ren woke up at his usual time, created clones for ninjutsu training, and left for his morning workout. By the time he finished, it was almost 8 a.m., so he headed straight to training ground 1. When he arrived, he saw Yujao and Hitoshi were already there. Yujao was practicing with her sword, while Hitoshi stood still, motionless. Ren walked over to Yujao first and greeted her, "Hey, Yujao. Good morning. Were you training here?" Yujao had noticed him approaching, so she responded without stopping her movements, "Good morning. Yes, I had to do sword training, so I thought it would be better to just train here." Ren nodded in understanding. If his own physical training didn't require him to move across Hidden Leaf Village in multiple laps, he would probably do the same. Training is training, No complaints. His gaze then shifted to Hitoshi, who was still standing completely still. What about Hitoshi? What is he doing? Ren asked. Yuzhou glanced at the Aburame before answering, I don't know. He came here, released some bugs from his sleeves, and has just been standing there like that. Curious, Ren approached Hitoshi and greeted, Morning. Good morning, Hitoshi responded flatly. Ren frowned slightly. What exactly are you doing? Hitoshi lifted his sleeve, revealing countless insects moving in intricate patterns. I'm practicing how to gather and analyze larger amounts of information at once, he explained. Ren subtly took a step back and muttered, cool. Then, without another word, he distanced himself even further. He wasn't afraid of bugs, but he definitely didn't like them. Shaking off the uneasy feeling, Ren began doing some basic stretches. A few minutes later, Uekata arrived. All three Geinin stopped what they were doing, and Hitoshi quickly recalled his insects. Good morning, sensei, they greeted in unison. Good morning. Uekata's voice remained as neutral as always. From today onward, we will gather here at this time for team training and individual training until evening. After that, we will complete a D-rank mission and end the day. I will adjust the timing of the missions as I see fit. Can you answer why? Hitoshi responded almost immediately, so that we are ready to perform a mission at any given time and state. Correct, Uekata affirmed. Team 1 will have fewer compulsory missions compared to other teams since we are required to be ready for immediate deployment. However, this will only begin once I believe you are prepared. Any questions? No, sensei. Alright. Let's begin. Chapter 37, Superpowered Underpaid Labor at Training Ground 1. Team 1 had just completed their teamwork training and was now taking a short break. The three Geinin sat on the ground, gasping and panting from exhaustion, while Uekata stood in front of them, completely composed. The three of you have shown visible improvements compared to yesterday, he began, his voice as calm as ever. But it is still not enough. The three Geinin straightened slightly, listening attentively. As you know, both Hitoshi's bugs and Yuzhou's lightning element have an inherent weakness to Ren's wind jutsu, he continued. Although this weakness can be overcome at higher levels, right now, the two of you are not at that level. So, you must adjust more compared to Ren, who can use his abilities to the fullest. Why? Yuzhou, who had recovered her breath first, answered without hesitation. Because it is foolish to limit the person with stronger abilities. If we do that, the lives of everyone will be in danger. Uekata nodded in approval. Correct. In a team, it is not possible for everyone to have the same level of strength, so you must adjust your styles around the one who is strongest. Right now, it is only between the three of you. However, in times of war, you will be expected to adapt on your own to follow your leader. That is why Hidden Lee Village emphasizes team-based combat rather than individuality, so you can learn how to adjust and mold yourselves. He paused for a moment before adding in a firm voice, some may not like taking the back seat, but they have no choice. Only the strong have choices. The others must follow. Uekata studied his students' reactions. He knew that exposing children to such harsh truths might not be ideal, but this was the reality of the shinobi world. It was better for them to face it now than learn it the hard way later. After all, he had also learned this fact early on in his shinobi career. The three Geinin did not react outwardly, but it was clear they were contemplating his words. Yuzhou's grip on her sword tightened, and her eyebrows were slightly furrowed, showing that she was deep in thought. Uekata did not give them much time to dwell on his words as he continued, have the three of you thought about what you want to learn in the future, or should I make detailed training plans for you? Hitoshi was the first to respond. I want to learn elemental jutsu. Uekata immediately responded. You do not have a large chakra pool, so elemental jutsu will only improve your strength slightly. Instead, you should add physical training to your schedule so you can handle any ambushes your insects might miss. I will provide some jutsus you can learn. Hitoshi absorbed the advice silently. Are you using a training seal? Uekata asked. Yes. 40 kilograms, Hitoshi replied. Start using 50 kilograms from tomorrow and follow this training schedule. Uekata handed him a slip of paper. Hitoshi accepted it with a nod. Next, Ren stepped forward. I want to learn Fuinjutsu and gain combat experience. Ren had originally planned to send a shadow clone to the library to gather information on Fuinjutsu, but this was a better opportunity. Since his sensei was a jonin, he might have access to far more advanced knowledge. Uekata studied him for a moment, lost in thought, before finally answering, I'll prepare the basics first. If you show talent in the field, then you will be allowed to continue. Otherwise, Fuinjutsu takes too much time from your schedule. Ren nodded, accepting the condition. We will have daily spars in the afternoon from today, Uekata added. Finally, Uekata turned to Yuzhou, who eagerly answered, I want to learn Kenjutsu techniques. She had strong fundamentals but was still using basic sword techniques and only had one elemental sword jutsu. She wanted to expand her skill set. However, Utakata shook his head. No. There are still gaps in your basic movements. Refine them first. Yujao frowned slightly but didn't argue. What level is your training seal at? Utakata asked. I can handle 40 kilograms, she replied. Apply a training seal to your sword as well, Utakata instructed. It will help develop the necessary muscles, which will benefit you later when you learn advanced techniques. Ren was sure he saw Yujao pout slightly, but she still nodded in agreement. Seeing that all three had accepted their training plans, Utakata finally said, take a break. We will start in 30 minutes. Then, without waiting for a response, he flickered away. The three Genin went their separate ways for lunch since none of them had brought food with them. After eating at home, they returned to training ground 1 before the 30-minute break ended. As they waited, they casually chatted about random things until Utakata flickered into the clearing. Without wasting any time, he immediately created 2 shadow clones. Hitoshi, I will teach you 3 fire-style jutsu today. From tomorrow, you will be responsible for refining them yourself, Utakata instructed. Yujao, you will be engaging in hand-to-hand combat with me without your sword. This is to prepare you for situations where you do not have your weapon. Ren, you will spar with me. Once he finished, one of his clones led Hitoshi to an open area where there was a small pond, while the other took Yujao to another clearing. Ren and Utakata remained where they were. We will fight in 3 different styles, Utakata explained. Today, only taijutsu and no ninjutsu. Tomorrow, only ninjutsu and no taijutsu. The day after that, we will mix both. This cycle will continue. Ren had no objections. The plan made sense, so he simply nodded in agreement. The 3 continued their intense training until the evening, when Utakata finally halted their exercises and announced, Hokage Tower, 5 minutes. Then, without another word, he flickered away. Despite their exhaustion, none of them complained and immediately rushed towards the village center. By the time Ren arrived at the Hokage Tower, Utakata was already standing there, arms crossed. A moment later, Yujao arrived, followed closely by Hitoshi. Let's go, Utakata instructed. The Hokage assigns the first mission of every rank himself to the teams. With that, he turned and led them into the tower. When they reached Hiruzen's office, before Utakata could even knock, a calm voice spoke from inside. Come in. Utakata pushed the door open and stepped inside, followed by his students. As one, the 4 of them knelt on one knee and greeted in unison. Lord Hokage. Hiruzen sat behind his desk, his usual grandfatherly smile on his face. Rise, he said kindly. Ren stood up and glanced around the room. Standing beside the Hokage were 2 other individuals, both elderly figures with stern expressions. From his memories, Ren recognized them immediately. Hamura Midokado and Koharu Udatane, the village elders and members of the Hidden Leaf Village Council. Before he could think further, Utakata glanced at the 2 elders and then turned to his team. These 2 are the village elders and members of the Hidden Leaf Village Council. The 3 Genin gave a respectful bow and greeted them. Elders, they said politely. Hamura merely gave a faint hum, acknowledging their presence. Without further delay, Utakata turned to the Hokage and spoke. Lord Hokage, we are here for the first D-rank mission of Team 1. Hiruzen let out a small chuckle. Ho ho ho. Then I have the perfect mission for you. He pulled out a scroll from his desk and continued. Yashido-san, a respected elder of the village, has been having back problems recently, making it difficult for him to tend to his garden. He has requested a very competent team to assist him. Hiruzen handed the mission scroll to Utakata, his smile widening slightly. Further details are in the scroll. Yashido-san may also provide additional instructions upon your arrival. Ren barely stopped himself from groaning. He was prepared for absurd missions, but his first shinobi task being weeding a garden? A quick glance at Yujao and Hitoshi told him they felt similarly because Hiruzen's smile had clearly widened at their reactions. Utakata accepted the scroll with a simple nod and turned to his students. Let's go, he said, leading them out of the office. As Team 1 exited the Hokage's office, they saw a man with a cane, his face partially wrapped in bandages, making his way up the stairs. Ren made no try to adjust his body or control his expression because he was sure a man like Denzo would quickly notice such things. He kept his normal expression as the 2 parties crossed paths without even glancing at each other. Inside the office, Koharu let out a small sigh, shaking her head as she turned to Hiruzen. Your habit of tormenting Genin with D-rank missions hasn't changed, I see. Hiruzen simply chuckled. Just then, the office door opened again, and Denzo Shimura entered. The atmosphere in the room shifted instantly, the previous light-hearted mood completely disappearing. Denzo walked up to Hiruzen's desk, his expression unreadable as he delivered his report in a flat, emotionless voice. We have established contact with a member of Team 1. We have confirmation that he is the last surviving member. The route is on their way to collect him. The room fell into complete silence. Chapter 38, Clearing out Snoop Dogg's stash. The silence in the Hokage's office was finally broken when Hiruzen gave his order. I will inform Utakata about the development. Until then, the Anbu will take over the duties. With that, the scene shifted to Team 1, who were rushing forward, following their sensei. Unlike before, Utakata did not flicker away this time. Instead, he kept his pace just ahead of his students, making sure they followed him closely. Ren, Yujao, and Hitoshi didn't question it and simply obeyed, sprinting behind him. As they ran, Ren quickly recognized the area they were heading toward. Training Ground 44. The infamous Forest of Death. He had visited the area once during one of his tours around Hidden Leaf Village, and he recalled that there were only a handful of houses in the vicinity. The team finally stopped in front of one such house, which looked so fragile it could collapse at any moment. The fences around the house were practically non-existent, and the overall condition made it clear that whoever lived here didn't care much for maintenance. Utakata stepped forward, his posture straight and expression unreadable. A moment later, a very, very old man shuffled into view. Yashido-san, Utakata greeted, his tone noticeably colder than usual. Team 1 is here to complete the mission you posted. Ren was certain he had never heard his sensei speak in such an icy tone before. The old man made an indecipherable grunt, clearly not understanding what was said. Utakata didn't repeat himself immediately, simply waiting as the man took a moment to process his words. After a few seconds, the elderly man finally stepped forward incredibly slowly. Ah, right. The mission, the old man muttered, his voice as frail as his appearance. He paused, squinting at the three geinin standing behind Utakata, and let out a dismissive scoff. I told that brat to send a competent team, and he sends me a bunch of kids. Humphrey. The three young shinobi blinked. Brat? The old man grumbled to himself, shaking his head. Looks like I'll have to remind him how I kicked his ass back in the day. By this time, Ren had already drawn a conclusion. This guy is old. Like, seriously old. If he can call the Hokage a brat, his age must be close to that of the first Hokage. Utakata, still expressionless, didn't respond to the man's mutterings. Instead, the old man continued. Alright, well, do your work. The weeds have grown so much in just a few days because of my back pain. He pointed lazily toward the area around Training Ground 44. The three geinin followed his gesture. Then they froze. The Forest of Death was huge. It had 16 different entrances, each with a large open clearing for shinobi to gather before entering the dangerous forest itself. Yet, the old man wasn't finished talking. The area around entrances 13 to 16 hasn't been cleaned for a few days, so the weeds have grown wild. You kids take care of it. There was a long, tense silence. Then, in perfect sync, the three young geinin turned their heads back toward their Jonin sensei as if asking for confirmation. Yujao's eye twitched slightly, and she finally voiced what they were all thinking. Garden? Utakata met her gaze without any change in expression. He paused for a brief moment before finishing. Caretaker. The geinin had no words. They simply accepted their fate as shinobi of the leaf and nodded. Understood, sensei. Utakata nodded approvingly. We have received the mission. Divide the work, each of you will take one gate, and you will work together on the last one. With nothing else to say, the three flickered away. Yujao took gate 13, Ren picked gate 14, and Hitoshi took gate 15. None of them spoke. They simply got to work. After a long day of training, Ren's entire body was sore, but his chakra reserves were still almost full. Since this was a D-rank mission, there was no restriction on using jutsu, so he decided to rely on wind-style jutsus to finish the task more efficiently. The wind cutter jutsu was the best choice. Unveiling his clawed gloves, he activated the jutsu, but instead of using all the blades at once, he focused on one blade from each hand to conserve chakra. The technique worked, slicing through the tall, overgrown weeds with precision. However, Ren quickly realized a problem. His height was still too short compared to the weeds growing around the gate, making it harder to trim the area evenly. After thinking for a moment, an idea struck him. He tightened his gloves, lowered his arms until his claws were at waist level, and began to rotate slowly on the spot. Gradually, he increased his speed, moving faster and faster until he was spinning like a blade. Then, he activated Wind Gutter. The moment he did, his body started moving uncontrollably. Wherever he spun, the weeds were shredded cleanly, their remnants flying through the air. The ground around Gate 14 quickly started clearing up, but Ren realized another problem that he couldn't stop. His body kept spinning and moving forward, and the only way he could think of stopping was digging his claws into the ground. The moment he did, his momentum halted abruptly, and his body lurched forward. Ren fell face first into the dirt. For a few moments, his vision spun wildly, and he simply lay there flat on his back, trying to reorient himself. Noticing the sudden storm of weeds near Gate 14, Yu Zhao walked over to investigate. As she arrived, she found Ren sprawled on the ground, eyes rolling as he tried to recover. She raised an eyebrow. "What exactly were you doing?" Ren, still breathing heavily, managed to reply between gasps. "Easy. Half method. Half trying." Yu Zhao looked at him skeptically before glancing at the partially cleared area around the gate. "You were trying an easy method?" she repeated, unconvinced, given his current state. Ren, who had managed to sit up by now, rubbed his head and chuckled. "I thought it would be easy. But it wasn't." Despite his exhaustion, he couldn't help but smile as his mind raced. This spinning technique might not have been the best for cutting weeds, but it had potential for cutting cough. He stopped himself as he remembered he had read about wind jutsus that created hurricanes, and there were also taijutsu techniques that used rotational force. If I can combine this idea with those two, I can create a large-scale wind-based attack, Ren thought to himself. However, he immediately realized a flaw. I'll need to figure out how to stop myself without crashing. Otherwise, I'll just be a self-destructive tornado. Shaking his head, he pushed those thoughts aside for now and got back to work. By the time the three Genin finished the task, nearly 2 hours had passed. What made the mission more exhausting was that Yoshida-san wasn't satisfied with just trimming the weeds. He wanted them completely uprooted. So instead of just cutting them down, they had to dig and pull them out manually, making the work twice as difficult. Ren couldn't help but think, Sensei must have done this mission too in the past. That's probably why he was so cold to this old man. When they were finally done, Utakata collected Yoshida-san's signature as proof of completion, and the team once again rushed toward the Hokage Tower to submit the mission. Upon arrival, Utakata took Hitoshi with him to the mission center on the ground floor of the Hokage building. Before leaving, he instructed, "You will each take turns learning how to submit mission reports. Once I've shown you how, this responsibility will be yours." Ren and Yu Zhao nodded while Hitoshi followed Utakata inside. When they reunited, Utakata gave his final instructions for the day. Tomorrow. 8 a.m. Then, with a flicker, he was gone. The three exhausted Genin didn't bother making small talk. With tired nods, they parted ways and headed home for some well-earned rest. After returning home, Ren wasted no time heading straight for a bath. The day's mission had left him completely covered in dirt and sweat, thanks to hours of digging up weeds. By the time he finished and sat down for dinner, he casually recounted the events of the mission to his father. The moment he mentioned Yoshida-san, however, Juichi's expression darkened visibly. Ren instantly caught on. So, they did this mission too. Multiple times, maybe. Once dinner was over, he lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, still thinking about his father's reaction. I still don't know who the third member of their team was. And what kind of person their sensei was. He decided he would ask his father another time. Lying in bed, Ren opened his system notifications to check for any rewards from his first mission. A message popped up. Congratulations. You have completed your first D-rank mission. Reward, 20 system points, convertible to 2 Jonin level points. Note, this reward is only issued for the first mission. The user will receive 1 system point for every 10 D-rank missions completed. Mission panel is now open, Ren nodded as he processed the information. Missions, D-rank, 0 out of 10. He converted the points into 2 Jonin level points and immediately invested them into Vitality. Vitality plus 2, Vitality 56. As he lay in bed, Ren thought about the system's reward structure. 1 point for every 10 missions. That's basically 1 Jonin level point every 3 months at our current pace. It was clear to him that the system rewarded growth relative to his own strength. If my strength wasn't already this high, maybe the rewards would have been better. But since I've pushed my stats to this level, the system recognizes that D-rank missions don't challenge me. Ren stared at the ceiling, contemplating. If I had graduated earlier, the mission rewards might have been better. But my physical training wouldn't have reached this level. If I had graduated later, I might not have even received points from D or maybe even C rank missions. The realization reassured him. Staying in the academy for that extra year was definitely the right choice. Satisfied, he let his thoughts drift away. Sleep quickly took over, and before he knew it, he was snoring lightly. Chapter 39, Level 2 Mid-Grade Talisman Master. For an entire month, Team 1 followed the same rigorous schedule. Team training, individual training, and D-rank missions. The order of activities was randomly decided by Utakata each day, ensuring they adapted to different situations efficiently. After weeks of training together, their teamwork had significantly improved. At the very least, they no longer interfered with each other's attacks during battle. Today, instead of meeting at Training Ground 1, the team had gathered in front of the Hokage Tower early in the morning. Unlike their first few days, the atmosphere between the three Gainins was now comfortable. Even in complete silence, there was no awkwardness. As they waited, Yujao suddenly spoke up. "When do you think we'll start doing C-rank missions?" Ren responded immediately, "I think it'll be soon. Sensei said that we'd officially take over the duties of the first dispatch squad once he deems us ready. Considering his standards, I doubt he'll consider us ready if we've only completed D-rank missions." Yujao nodded thoughtfully, and Hitoshi added his own opinion. "I think we'll have to complete an elimination mission first. Only then will we be considered ready for other missions." Ren and Yujao both agreed with this assessment. A shinobi's missions were categorized into different types: elimination, defense, rescue, information gathering, and infiltration. Elimination missions specifically involved combat and the killing of a target. It made sense that every Geinin would have to complete an elimination mission to be recognized as a true shinobi. Ren had already mentally prepared himself for the reality of taking a life. He had accepted it as part of the profession he had chosen, so he was never overly bothered by the fact that he would have to take life of a person once again. But then, for a brief moment, a strange thought crossed his mind. Why did I think once again? I haven't done this before. His brows furrowed slightly as he tried to focus on the odd feeling. Had he killed before? That was impossible. He had no memories of ever doing such a thing. Yet before he could dwell on the thought further, it suddenly vanished from his mind as if it had never existed. Ren felt something was amiss, but before he could question it any further, Uekata arrived. "Today, we will do a C-rank mission," Uekata announced in his usual neutral tone. "I hope you all have everything prepared." The three Gainins nodded immediately. Uekata had drilled into them that members of the first dispatch squad must always be fully equipped with weapons, rations, and any other necessary tools. Ren glanced down at the storage belt fastened around his waist. This was his own creation, his first practical use of Fuinjutsu. As he thought about it, his mind drifted back to the first time he had ever used Fuinjutsu. Team 1 had just completed their training for the day and was waiting for their sensei to dismiss them. Uekata arrived in front of his students and, without preamble, handed a scroll to Ren. "This contains everything necessary to see if you have any talent in Fuinjutsu," he said in his usual neutral tone. Ren took the scroll, nodding in appreciation. "Thank you, sensei." Uekata gave a short nod before addressing the team. "All right, you are dismissed for today. Tomorrow at 8 a.m. Without waiting for a response, he flickered away. As soon as their sensei left, Yujao turned toward Ren, curiosity evident in her expression. "Why do you want to learn Fuinjutsu?" she asked. "Isn't it better to focus on learning more ninjutsu?" Ren already had a prepared answer. "I already know plenty of jutsu, and the ones I actually want to learn require more chakra than I currently have. So, I figured I'd try Fuinjutsu and see if I have any talent for it." He obviously couldn't tell them the truth that he had obtained a Fuinjutsu talent from the system, so this was the best explanation he could come up with. Yujao nodded, seemingly satisfied with his reasoning. She bid farewell and left, while Ren and Hitoshi also made their way home. After taking a bath and eating a light meal, Ren headed straight to the basement. 4 shadow clones were already inside, practicing their assigned tasks. Currently, he limited himself to 4 clones because he still couldn't use the multi-shadow clone jutsu, which would allow him to create multiple clones instantly instead of summoning them one by one. Based on his calculations, he needed at least 1000 CP to function properly while keeping some chakra in reserve for emergencies. That meant each clone could hold 1000 CP and train without worrying about dispelling too soon. Since his shadow clone mastery was in the advanced stage, his clones could last an entire day unless forcefully dispelled. His plan was simple: maintain 4 clones as usual while having one of them create weaker clones with minimal chakra to practice Fuinjutsu in the future. He dispelled the current clones, feeling the influx of memories and noticing a minor increase in his wind and earth style mastery. Once settled, Ren unsealed the scroll Uekata had given him. The first thing that appeared was a worn-out book titled, Fuinjutsu for Barbarians. Ren's eyebrow twitched. Still, his irritation faded slightly when he noticed the author's name, Hangako Uzumaki. Since it was written by an Uzumaki, he figured they had the right to call everyone else barbarians when it came to Fuinjutsu. But that didn't mean he would accept it quietly. The system had already confirmed that his talent in Fuinjutsu is comparable to a low-level Uzumaki genius. He set the book aside and took out the other items in the scroll. A stack of special papers for drawing seals, a bottle of chakra-infused ink as clearly labeled on the side, a brush and a stack of normal papers. After neatly arranging the items, he picked up the worn-out book. The edges were rough, and it was clear that someone else had used it before. There were scribbled notes in the margins, along with minor edits and comments. Ren flipped open to the first page and read. Fuinjutsu is a beautiful art that barbarians have ruined with their crude methods. If you wish to learn the correct way to study Fuinjutsu, start with calligraphy. Only if your calligraphy looks like you can become an artist, if not a hired killer, should you turn to the next page. Ren stared at the dramatic introduction, his expression unreadable. Then, he let out a tired sigh. Of course, it starts like this. Even though the beginning of the book was dramatic, Ren still followed its instructions without complaint. Since the scroll already contained a stack of normal paper, he decided to bring some regular ink and a brush from the house to practice. He sat down in a proper posture, carefully recalling the correct way to write calligraphy. To start, he slowly and precisely wrote his own name. Once he finished, he reviewed his work and was honestly surprised. The strokes were neat and precise. Maybe the Fuinjutsu talent subtly improved my calligraphy as well? He mused. He continued writing various words, symbols, and even some simple drawings until his handwriting became consistent in everything he wrote. Satisfied, he flipped to the next page. If you are on this page, it is assumed that your calligraphy skills are sufficient. The next step is to memorize the Fuinjutsu symbols. Below the text, there were dozens of unique symbols, each with a specific purpose. Some looked ancient, while others appeared newly created. This book must have passed through many hands over time. Each person likely added their own discoveries or modifications. The basic symbols included those for the 5 elements: fire, wind, water, lightning, and earth. The yin and yang and space and time. There were countless other symbols, including ones for explosion, hold, release, sharp, hard, flow, and many more. A casual glance revealed over 100 in total. Ren realized that memorizing them all at once would take too long, even with shadow clones, so it was better to learn them gradually, seal by seal. The book contained various basic Fuinjutsu applications, such as explosion seals, storage seals, and barrier seals. It also mentioned a unique technique whereby concentrating chakra in one's eyes, it was possible to see hidden seals placed on objects unless those seals were further concealed by advanced layers, in which case a higher level of mastery was required. Curious, Ren decided to test it immediately. He focused a small amount of chakra into his eyes and glanced down at his gloves. A faint glow appeared on the back of each glove, revealing an inscribed conceal symbol. So that's how it worked, he thought. He checked the book and confirmed the conceal symbol's function. It was used to hide things until chakra was supplied or a specific action was performed. To confirm, he flexed his fingers, activating the retractable claws. As expected, the conceal symbol vanished. Next, he examined the claws themselves. This time, he saw 2 additional symbols, one for sharp and another for sturdy. Ren was slightly surprised. I didn't expect the rewards to academy students to have seals like these. Looks like Dad had something to do with it. He recalled how Ren had asked Utakata to speak with Juichi when he handed over the scroll containing weapon design. Wanting to test further, Ren looked up at the ceiling of the basement. This time, however, he saw nothing. Looks like I need to improve my Fuinjutsu mastery before I can see higher level seals. Turning the page, Ren read about the first Fuinjutsu seal in the book, the explosion seal. In a normal explosion seal, only 4 symbols are used: fire, hold, release, and explosion. The explanation continued. The fire symbol generates fire chakra. The hold symbol stores the chakra in place. The release symbol activates the stored chakra when triggered. The explosion symbol causes detonation upon activation. Ren read the entire process twice to ensure he understood it completely. The next section explained how to actually create a seal. To inscribe Fuinjutsu, a user must draw the symbols using chakra-infused ink on Fuinjutsu paper while channeling yang chakra. An expert can eventually create seals without ink or paper. However, beginners must learn to control yang chakra first, as it is the foundation of Fuinjutsu. Ren read carefully. Unlike normal chakra, yang chakra has unique properties. It originates from the heart and naturally circulates through the body. To use it in Fuinjutsu, one must generate additional yang chakra and redirect it into the chakra pathways to the brush instead of the arteries. Most shinobis were able to generate such low amount of yang chakra easily, however controlling it was another problem. That was why there were so few medical ninjas and Fuinjutsu users. He however was able to complete this step easily since he had advanced level of chakra control. He practiced generating and controlling the yang chakra until he was satisfied. Now ready, Ren picked up the chakra-infused brush and dipped it in the special ink. Slowly, he channeled yang chakra into the brush and began inscribing the symbols onto the Fuinjutsu paper. His movements were slow and deliberate, knowing that any disruption in chakra flow could cause the seal to explode in his face. After several tense minutes, he completed the final stroke of the explosion symbol. Leaning back, he let out a deep breath. Even though he was nervous, the seal was successfully completed on his first attempt. This confirmed that his Fuinjutsu talent was real and that he worried too much about an explosion happening on his face. Relaxing, Ren picked up the completed seal and examined it. It looked just like every other explosion tag he had seen before except slightly darker due to how hard he was pressing the brush. Satisfied, he channeled chakra into the activation point and threw the tag away. A second later, boom. A small explosion erupted, just as described in the book and how an actual explosion tag works. Though the range wasn't very large, Ren remembered that the book contained methods to enhance explosion seals. Excited by his success, Ren created a few clones and assigned them to practice Fuinjutsu while he checked his system. To his surprise, there were 3 new mastery categories added: Chakra Enhancement Mastery -8%, Beginner, Yang Chakra Mastery -5%, Beginner, Fuinjutsu Mastery -6%, Beginner. Ren raised an eyebrow. I expected Fuinjutsu and Yang Chakra Mastery to appear, but Chakra Enhancement? Thinking back, he remembered focusing chakra into his eyes to see hidden seals. It seems that I can enhance different parts of my body by supplying chakra to them. I've read about this in fanfics, but I completely forgot until now. A grin spread across his face as he realized, if I master this, I can enhance my taijutsu by applying chakra reinforcement to my arms and legs. Maybe I can even achieve Tsunada's chakra enhanced strength. Excited by the new possibilities, Ren closed the book and left the basement. As he lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, one thought remained in his mind. Fuinjutsu is way more fun than I expected. Chapter 40, The Classic Bandit Hunting Mission, Part 1. From that day onward, Ren's clone training schedule changed. One clone focused on wind jutsu, another on earth jutsu, and the third practiced yang release. The final clone was divided into 9 smaller clones, each with just enough chakra to stay active, all dedicated to Fuinjutsu practice. After successfully creating his first explosion tag, Ren took it to Utakata, who merely nodded in approval and instructed him to keep the Fuinjutsu book safe. After the explosion tag, Ren moved on to his second seal, the storage seal. This seal utilized the space and hold symbols in multiple ways. Typically, storage seals required a large surface area and were commonly inscribed on scrolls. However, after a bit of practice, Ren managed to shrink the seal's size enough to fit onto the belt he wore around his waist, making it far more convenient for carrying essential items. Team 1 entered the mission hall, a spacious room where 10 chunins were stationed, busy handling mission requests and reports. However, today, the third Hokage himself was present, seated at the center of the hall. This was not unusual. The third Hokage often made unannounced visits to observe mission assignments, though no one knew his exact reasons for doing so. Upon seeing him, Team 1 immediately stopped and greeted, "Lord Hokage." The old man gave them a kind nod, his usual grandfatherly smile in place, before turning his gaze to Utakata, who responded, "Team 1 is here for a C-rank mission." "Ah, yes, Team 1, Hiruzen murmured, scanning the 3 Gainins briefly. "I remember seeing a mission that would suit you quite well." He pretended to think for a moment, stroking his beard before retrieving a scroll. "Ah, here it is." Unrolling the scroll, he read aloud, "Haito Village, a civilian settlement to the east of Hidden Leaf Village, has reported sightings of bandits. Additionally, several children have gone missing. Your mission is to investigate, recover the abducted children if possible, and eliminate all the bandits." The Gainins, now fully attentive, straightened up and responded in unison, "Yes, sir." Utakata took the mission scroll and gestured for his team to follow. As they exited the building, he glanced at them and asked, "Do you have everything prepared?" "Yes, sir," the Gainins confirmed. Satisfied with their response, Utakata gave a brief nod. "All right, let's go. I'll show you the procedure for leaving the village on a mission. Meet me at the east gate after you inform your families, however this is the only time I will allow this. You are to inform your families that you may be sent away without any prior notice in the future. Since you all are from shinobi families, I believe this won't be a problem." Without waiting for a reply, he flickered away. Ren quickly returned home and left a note for his father that said that he would be away on a mission and rushed to the east gate. Hidden Leaf Village had 4 main entry gates, one in each direction, with the main gate facing north. Since Haito Village was to the east, Team 1 assembled at the east gate, where Utakata was already waiting. He led them toward the guard station at the gate, where 2 shinobi stood watch. Handing over the mission scroll, Utakata explained, "Every mission outside the village requires 4 stamps. First, from the guards when leaving the village. Second, from the employer upon mission completion. Third, from the guards again when returning. And finally, the fourth from the mission center when submitting the report. The guard, understanding that this was Team 1's first mission outside Hidden Leaf Village, gave a small, encouraging smile. Good luck out there. As he handed the scroll back to Utakata, the three Gainins nodded in acknowledgement before stepping beyond the gates. Leaving the village for the first time since arriving in this world should have been exciting for Ren, but any enthusiasm quickly faded as he realized the scenery barely changed. Beyond Hidden Leaf Village's walls, the landscape consisted of an endless stretch of thick trees, their dense canopy blocking out even the sunlight. Team 1 moved in a single file formation as they traveled, following the standard Hidden Leaf Village squad arrangement. Hitoshi, the team's censor, led the way, followed by Yujao. Utakata, as the squad's healer, stayed in the middle, and Ren, the second combatant, covered the rear. This formation ensured that any potential threat would be detected early, with the combatants positioned to defend both the front and the back. As they moved swiftly through the dense forest, Yujao asked, "Sensei, do you know the exact location of the village?" Utakata nodded and then shook his head. "Yes, but Hitoshi will locate it." Hitoshi, who had been deep in thought, suddenly spoke. Hidden Leaf Village doesn't allow civilian settlements within 20 kilometers of the village walls. Since this entire region is filled with dense forest, it serves as a defense line. "Sensei, is Hito Village a pure civilian settlement?" "Yes," Utakata confirmed. Hitoshi nodded. "Then the village should be between 20 to 50 kilometers from Hidden Leaf Village. Any settlement with a shinobi presence would not be permitted within 50 kilometers." With that information, the team moved forward at full speed. A 20-kilometer distance was nothing for a shinobi. Ren covered more than this every morning during his training with weights. Now that he had removed them for the mission, travel felt even easier. Upon reaching the 20-kilometer mark, they slowed down. Hitoshi turned to Utakata once more. "Sensei, what is the estimated population of Hito Village?" "Around 250, Utakata replied vaguely. Hitoshi nodded and immediately sent out his insects to scout. After a short silence, he finally spoke. "Found it." Before anyone could respond, Utakata cut in. "You were lucky that no other nearby settlements had a population similar to Hito Village, so you identified it easily. However, in the future, you won't always have such a simple search. I expect you to employ multiple methods to track locations faster." "Understood," Hitoshi acknowledged. Ren and Yujao, knowing this wasn't their area of expertise, remained silent as they followed their teammate. Soon enough, they reached a wooden signboard at the entrance of the village that read Hito Village in bold letters, confirming that they had indeed arrived. Utakata didn't pause and immediately spoke, "I will lead the mission this time. In future missions, the three of you will take turns leading, and I will not interfere in any way. You will be responsible for every decision you make." Without waiting for a response, he walked toward the village entrance, where two guards stood holding shovels, clearly not trained fighters. Their expressions hardened when they saw approaching strangers, but as soon as their eyes landed on the Hidden Leaf Village forehead protectors, they visibly relaxed. One of them immediately turned and ran back into the village, likely to inform someone of importance, while the other stepped forward and greeted, "Welcome, Shinobi-sama. Our village chief will meet you shortly. Please, come in." Utakata nodded, and Team 1 followed him inside. The moment they entered, a young man rushed toward them, the same guard from earlier trailing behind him. The man stopped just in front of the team and gave a respectful bow before introducing himself. "Greetings, Shinobi-sama. I am the village chief, Sugawara. May I see the mission scroll?" Without hesitation, Utakata handed him the scroll. "Greetings. What can you tell me about the bandits?" Sugawara scanned the scroll, confirming its legitimacy, and sighed deeply before answering. "A few days ago, one of our trade caravans was returning from Kuma village when it was suddenly attacked. Some of our guards tried to fight back, but they were quickly overpowered. It wasn't that the bandits had greater numbers, it was their strength that was the problem." The village chief took a deep breath and continued. "They all wore gray caps, and their leader was especially powerful. I think he might be a shinobi." The man shivered slightly, but Utakata offered no comfort. Instead, he spoke with a neutral tone. "Please do not make assumptions. Now, tell me about the missing children. Do you have any sketches of them?" Nodding, the chief reached into his pocket and pulled out 4 pieces of paper, handing them over. Without even glancing at them, Utakata passed them to Hitoshi. Hitoshi examined the sketches, and Ren and Yujao peered over his shoulder. There were 2 boys and 2 girls. The boys looked older than the 3 of them, while one girl appeared around Ren's age and the other was slightly older. Suddenly, Hitoshi's insects swarmed the portraits, covering them entirely. The gathered villagers flinched in terror, clearly unaccustomed to such a sight. Some even took a step back, eyeing Hitoshi with visible unease. Utakata ignored their reactions and motioned for the village chief to continue. Sugawara swallowed and spoke hesitantly. Yes, the two boys went missing about a week ago, right around the time the bandits first appeared. The two girls, sisters, disappeared 4 days ago, which is when I finally decided to request Hidden Leaf Village's help. Utakata nodded, then turned to Hitoshi. Do you have a general location? Yes, Hitoshi confirmed. Utakata shifted his attention back to the village chief. Thank you for the information. We will investigate the trail we found and update you soon. Hitoshi once again took the lead as Team 1 left Haito Village, guiding them toward the trail his insects had discovered earlier. As they moved, he explained, while searching for the village, my insects also found wheel tracks accompanied by horse and human footprints. There was a faint trace of chakra that my Kika-Ika picked up, but it's extremely weak, not even comparable to the residual chakra a Gainen would leave behind. Ren was the first to answer. There are two possibilities. Either someone tried to erase their chakra trail but wasn't entirely successful, or the bandit chief has his chakra pathways opened but lacks the ability to use it effectively. As soon as Ren finished, Yujao added, but if the bandit chief were a shinobi, wouldn't that make this a B-rank mission? Utakata shook his head slightly. No. It's the second possibility. The village always confirms the difficulty level of a mission before assigning it. If there were a risk of encountering a shinobi opponent, the ranking would have been adjusted accordingly. The fact that this remains a C-rank mission means there is little to no chance of us facing an actual shinobi. Thus Ren's analysis is right. The bandit leader has likely opened his chakra pathways but lacks the proper training or control to be a threat as a shinobi. Let's go, we will finish the mission today and return. Utakata ordered. Chapter 41, The Classic Bandit Hunting Mission, Part 2, Bonus. Team 1 soon arrived at a location where numerous footprints and wagon tracks marked the ground. Utakata observed the scene for a moment before speaking. This matches the description given by the village chief about the bandits stealing caravans. Can you still trace the chakra trail? He asked, turning to Hitoshi. Hitoshi closed his eyes briefly, his Kika-Ika moving around before he responded. Yes, it's faint, but I can still track it. The trail leads towards the mountains. Utakata nodded and glanced up at the sky. It's already noon. Rather than waiting until nightfall, it would be more effective to eliminate them now. Hitoshi will lead us as close as possible to their location. Once we reach the target area, Ren will infiltrate first. His task is to find the missing children and confirm our suspicions regarding the bandit chief. Once we have that information, we'll formulate a plan. Let's move. The team moved swiftly towards the mountain, sticking to the trees for cover. Once they arrived, they each took positions, blending into the dense foliage. Hitoshi spread his Kika-Iku, letting them swarm the area undetected. After a few moments of silence, he spoke. I've identified the cave where the chakra trail ends. Ren immediately created a shadow clone, supplying it with 500 chakra points. His mastery of the shadow clone jutsu had reached an advanced level, allowing him to distribute chakra to his clones as needed. Hitoshi released a small insect, which buzzed in front of Ren's clone. Follow this bug. It'll lead you to the cave, he instructed. The clone nodded and silently followed the insect through the thick trees, navigating carefully until it reached a clearing. At the entrance of a cave, two bandits stood guard, their stance relaxed, completely unaware of any approaching threat. The clone positioned itself behind a tree, quickly molding chakra to create two hardened stones using earth style. After ensuring no other bandits were in the vicinity, he flicked his wrists, launching the stones with precision. Both bandits collapsed instantly, knocked unconscious before they could even react. Ren's clone approached the cave entrance cautiously, scanning for hidden traps or weapons. Finding none, he suppressed his presence and masked his scent. It was a basic yet essential stealth techniques taught at the academy. Moving inside, he immediately noticed bandits stationed at regular intervals. Instead of engaging them, he leaped onto the ceiling, using chakra to cling to the surface as he advanced deeper into the cave unnoticed. The tunnel led to a large chamber where most of the bandits had gathered. At the center of the room sat a hulking man on a pile of rocks, polishing his blade with a cloth. He was engaged in conversation with two boys standing before him. Ren could not see the boys' faces, as their backs were turned, but he focused his chakra to enhance his hearing. The bandit chief's deep voice echoed in the chamber. You two did a fine job bringing in the girls. Since they're sisters, some perverted bastard might be willing to pay more. One of the boys responded in a slight tone. There are still more pairs of sisters in the village. We can get more if you want. The other boy chimed in eagerly. Yeah, chief. We'll get them out of the village, and you can take them. But when are you going to unlock our chakra, like you promised? The chief let out a rough laugh. Don't worry, I'll help you soon enough. Now go. Plan how you'll snatch more girls. I need to rest. The boys nodded and turned around. Ren waited patiently, wanting to confirm his suspicions. As soon as the boys turned, his eyes narrowed. Their faces matched the missing boys from the village chief's report. He also located the kidnapped girls, bound and gagged in the corner of the chamber. With his objectives completed, he carefully made his way back out of the cave. On his way, he dragged the unconscious guards near a tree and concealed them before dispelling himself. The real Ren absorbed the memories instantly. Turning to his team, he reported, "The girls are alive. The bandit chief plans to sell them." The two missing boys weren't kidnapped. They actually joined the bandits willingly in exchange for having their chakra pathways unlocked. They were the ones who helped abduct the girls. There are 15 people inside the cave, including the chief and the two boys. I knocked out 2 guards at the entrance and hid them, so there are 13 left inside. Utakata gave a small nod, absorbing the information. After a brief silence, Utakata gave his orders. "We will complete the mission as assigned. Eliminate all the bandits and rescue the kidnapped children. Since we have reason to believe that 2 of the 4 abducted individuals are working with the bandits, we will confirm this first. If the information is accurate, they will also be eliminated." His gaze swept over the 3 Genin before he added, "You 3 decide who will deal with the bandit leader. The other 2 will handle the rest. Ren, before you go inside, finish off the 2 you knocked unconscious." As soon as Utakata finished speaking, Yu Zhao stepped forward. "I want to take on the leader. Both of you had some roles in the mission so far, so at least let me handle the strongest opponent." Ren had no objections. From what his clone had observed earlier, the bandit leader was only level 12, barely Genin level. He wasn't particularly interested in dealing with someone that weak. The remaining bandits would be enough for his first time. Hitoshi also gave a nod of agreement. Before they moved, Utakata spoke again. "Ren will retrieve the girls first. Just in case anything happens, you need to confirm with them whether or not the boys were truly their kidnappers. I will be watching, but I will not interfere. And one more thing." He paused, looking at each of them. "No matter what happens, do not stop." Then, without another word, he vanished. The 3 Genin exchanged glances before setting off toward the cave. Ren separated from them momentarily to finish off the 2 unconscious guards. He found them still lying where he had hidden them. Without hesitation, he pulled out 2 kunai and plunged them into their chests. Blood spurted out, staining his hands as their bodies was still just like it was before they were killed. He checked their breathing to ensure they were truly dead, then wiped his kunai clean and rushed back to the others. Yu Zhao cast a glance at him, her lips slightly parted as if she wanted to say something. He already knew what she wanted to ask, "Are you okay?" But the truth was, he didn't feel anything. There had been no hesitation when he killed them, no sickness in his stomach, no guilt in his heart. It was as if he had done this before. But that wasn't possible, right? Pushing those thoughts aside, Ren simply nodded at Yu Zhao, signaling that he was fine. She didn't press further. Together, the 3 entered the cave. Yu Zhao sprinted ahead without hesitation, heading straight for the leader while Ren and Hitoshi focused on clearing the hallway of bandits. Ren moved swiftly, his kunai slicing through throats with precision while Hitoshi just swarmed them with his insects. The bandits barely had time to register what was happening before they collapsed. Most were barely level 7 or 8, about as strong as academy students. They were no challenge. By the time Ren entered the main hall, Yu Zhao had already reached the bandit chief. "What the hell? Who are you?" The moment she laid eyes on him, she didn't even let him finish his sentence. The sound of steel piercing flesh silenced him. Yu Zhao's sword had already been driven straight through his chest. Meanwhile, Ren reached the 2 girls and immediately ungagged the older one. As soon as she could speak, she shouted without hesitation. "The 2 of them are with the bandits. They kidnapped us." Her furious gaze was directed toward the 2 boys standing nearby. One of the boys scowled, his face twisting in anger. "You bitch. You think we wanted to do this? We just wanted to have access to our chakra, to become strong. You think we're any different from those brats who came to save you? They were just lucky to be born in Hidden Leaf Village. If we had the same chances, do you think we'd be weaker than them?" Ren finished untying the girls as the boys' rant continued, then turned toward them with kunai in both hands. "Well, this sounds more like a you problem." Before they could react, he thrust both kunai into their throats. They gagged and choked on their own blood, some of it splattering onto Ren's hands. Their eyes widened in disbelief as life faded from them. Their bodies hit the ground with dull thuds. Ren turned away without a second thought and scanned the remaining bandits. There were still 3 alive. Without hesitation, he flicked his kunai at them, the accuracy sharpened by his 89% shuriken jutsu mastery. All 3 fell instantly. Once the team confirmed that all enemies had been eliminated, Ren picked up the younger girl who had fallen unconscious at some point while Yu Zhao helped the older one to her feet. The 3 exited the cave and found Utakata waiting for them outside. The Jonin gave a single nod. Good job. Then he turned to Ren. The boys? Ren wiped his blood-stained hands on a cloth and responded simply, with the bandits. The girls confirmed it, and they also confessed. I eliminated them. Utakata gave another nod. Understood. Let's get the girls back. The team rushed back to the village, moving swiftly through the trees. The younger girl remained asleep on Ren's back, while Yujao carried the older sister. They reached Haito village in no time. The guards at the entrance immediately called for the village chief, who arrived within minutes. He looked relieved the moment he saw the girls safe. Utakata stepped forward and spoke in a neutral tone. The mission is complete. The bandits have been eliminated, and the kidnapped girls have been safely recovered. The two boys were not kidnapped, they willingly allied with the bandits and were responsible for abducting these two girls. You can confirm this with her. He gestured toward the older girl. The girl, who had already run to her parents, turned back and firmly nodded. It's true. The boys helped the bandits take us. The village chief's face paled. We had no idea. His voice was laced with fear, knowing how seriously Hidden Leaf Village treated cases of false information. Utakata shook his head. Don't worry. This won't cause any problems for your village. The chief visibly sagged in relief. With a deep bow, he took out a stamp and pressed it onto the mission scroll, then handed it back to Utakata. Thank you for your service, Shinobi-sama. I hope you and your students have a bright future ahead. Utakata accepted the scroll, nodded at the village chief, and turned to his team. Let's go. Without another word, Team 1 vanished into the trees, heading back to Hidden Leaf Village. Chapter 42. The prom queen has blood on her hands. Team 1 moved swiftly and silently through the trees, but then, for the first time since they had known him, Utakata spoke not in his usual neutral tone, but with something different. Do you know why the village always gives new Geinin their first C-rank mission where they must take a life? The three Geinin remained silent, listening. The village wants to ensure that the young kids who are having fun in the academy until now finally gain some maturity when they take a life. Killing is like a rite of passage for a shinobi. The moment you do it, you stop being just a student, you become an actual ninja who can serve the village. Utakata continued, his tone calm. A shinobi will face many trials in their short life. If they overcome those trials, then maybe just maybe their short life will become a long one. For some, taking a life will be easy, Utakata went on. For others, it will be the hardest thing they have ever done. But in the end, it doesn't matter whether it was hard or easy. Once a life is gone, it's gone. Nothing you do will change that. Ren exhaled softly, his mind replaying the moment his kunai sliced through the boys' throats, the warmth of their blood splattering onto his hands. He hadn't felt guilt. He hadn't felt hesitation. Should he have? Utakata spoke again, his voice cutting through their thoughts. All you need to remember is this: you took a life because if you didn't, you would have been the one to die. That is the reality of being a shinobi. Then, in a quieter voice, Utakata added, if you feel like you cannot continue taking lives, then leave the career of a shinobi. Or become strong enough that you can subdue your opponents without needing to kill them. The three Geinin exchanged glances, but no one spoke. But unless you choose to walk away, Utakata concluded, all you can do is keep taking lives. Until no one can take yours. As they continued moving through the trees, unseen by his students, Utakata slipped a small, worn-out diary into his chest pocket. He pressed it there for a brief moment before letting it go. The journey back to Hidden Leaf Village continued in silence. By the time the sun had set, Team 1 had already returned to Hidden Leaf Village. At the village gates, Utakata collected the mission stamp from the guard before turning to his students. I will go and submit the confirmation for the mission's completion. You all can go home. Tomorrow, we meet at Training Ground 1 at 8 a.m. Without waiting for a response, he flickered away, leaving the three Geinin standing there. Ren exchanged glances with Yujao and Hitoshi before saying, let's meet tomorrow. Bye. Then, with a flicker, he disappeared, heading home. When Ren entered his house, he saw Juichi already seated at the table, reading the note he had left behind. Hearing the door, Juichi glanced up and said, oh, I thought you'd be gone for at least a day or two. Ren shrugged. Yeah, I thought so too. That's why I left the note, but the mission was easy, so we finished it quickly. Juichi nodded. Alright. Go take a bath, then we'll have dinner. Ren did as he was told, washing away the dirt and sweat from the mission before returning to the table. Dinner was already prepared, and as they ate, silence stretched between them. It wasn't an uncomfortable silence, just the usual quiet understanding between father and son. After a while, Ren finally broke it. Aren't you going to ask me anything? Instead of answering, Juichi countered, do you want to tell me anything? Ren fell silent again, contemplating his father's words as they continued eating. Eventually, he spoke. It was really easy, you know. I thought it would be harder, but it wasn't. And I didn't even feel anything. Was it wrong that I didn't feel anything? Juichi took a slow sip of water before answering, his voice calm but firm. It is easy, indeed. And it's not entirely right that you felt nothing. But it's not wrong either. He placed the glass down and looked at Ren. Just remember this, everything is fine as long as you don't turn into a bloodthirsty monster. But hell, even if you do, you'll still find me standing beside you. He gave a small laugh, standing up from the table and stretching as he walked toward the door. Before stepping outside, he added, no matter what you do, no matter how many lives you take in the future, even if people call you a monster or a demon, in the end, you will always be you. And nothing can change that. Then he stepped outside, leaving Ren alone. Ren sighed, thinking about his father's words and those Utakata had spoken earlier. He quietly cleaned the dishes before heading to his room, where he finally opened his system rewards. Congratulations. You have completed your first C-rank mission, rewards, 3 Jonin level points. Note, this reward is only given for first-time completion. Subsequent C-rank mission rewards will be based on mission difficulty. Maximum reward, 5 system points. Ren closed the system after adding all 3 points to vitality, as usual. He had noticed a pattern when his vitality increased, the growth speed of his trainable physical stats also increased. Previously, his physical training had slowed down, but after adding points to vitality, he could push himself further again. Before long, sleep claimed him. The next day, Team 1 gathered at Training Ground 1 as instructed. As usual, they arrived early, waiting for their sensei to appear. A moment later, Utakata flickered into view and, without preamble, handed each of them an envelope. These are your payments from yesterday's mission, he stated simply. A C-rank mission typically rewarded anywhere between 30,000 to 100,000 ryo. The mission reward for their previous job had been 50,000 ryo, of which 40%, 20,000 ryo, went to Utakata, while the remaining 60% was split evenly among the 3 geinin, leaving them with 10,000 ryo each. Ren took the envelope and stored it in his storage belt without much thought. Unlike some other geinin, he didn't have many expenses. His kunai, shuriken, and ration pills were all provided by his father, so he hadn't even needed to buy them himself. In fact, he didn't even know their prices. He also didn't need to buy explosion tags or storage scrolls because his clones were constantly producing them. However, his materials were running low, so he would need to purchase more soon. He also considered selling some of the excess explosion tags and storage scrolls, especially the storage scrolls. He had more than enough, and keeping so many served no real purpose. His thoughts were interrupted when Utakata spoke again. From now on, we will complete 1 C-rank mission every week, aside from any emergency missions that may be assigned to us. At this, the geinin perked up slightly. It was a clear sign that they were now being considered capable enough for more frequent real-world missions. Seeing their reactions, Utakata added, yes, from now on, we will be available for emergency missions as well. That means you must always be prepared to move out at a moment's notice. The 3 geinin nodded in understanding. This was exactly what they had been training for over the past month. They had known from the start that their team had been formed to be the first dispatch squad. Now that they were finally stepping into that role, they had no complaints. With everything settled, Team 1 resumed their rigorous training once more. By the time the sun was about to set, Team 1 had completed their training and finished their assigned D-rank mission for the day. With nothing else left to do, Utakata dismissed them. As Ren was about to leave for the marketplace to see if he could sell some explosion tags and storage scrolls, Yujao suddenly asked, "What are you guys doing now?" Ren responded casually, "I'm heading to the market." Hitoshi, on the other hand, surprised them both by saying, "I'm going to play with my little sister." Both Ren and Yujao stopped in their tracks and turned to Hitoshi in disbelief before asking in unison, "You have a sister?" Unfazed by their reaction, Hitoshi simply nodded. "Yes." Still trying to process the unexpected revelation, Yujao asked, "How old is she?" "4," he answered, his tone as calm and neutral as ever. There was a brief silence as Yujao and Ren exchanged glances, trying to reconcile the image of their quiet and reserved teammate with the idea of him playing with a 4-year-old. Hitoshi just didn't seem like the type to have a younger sibling, let alone one he actively spent time with. Seeing that neither of them had any more questions, Hitoshi nodded slightly and said, "Goodbye," before turning to leave. Even after he was gone, Yujao shook her head and muttered, "I really didn't expect him to have a sister." Ren chuckled. "Yeah, me neither. He doesn't really act like someone who has a little sister." Though he had known Hitoshi since their first year at the academy, they had never really talked much, not even after becoming teammates. So in a way, Ren still felt like he didn't know him that well. This was just another reminder of that. The two walked together for a while before parting ways near the marketplace Yuzhou, heading home while Ren continued onward. The marketplace Ren visited this time was one specifically set up for shinobi, with most stores catering exclusively to ninja supplies. He walked through the area, observing various items for sale. A set of 6 kunai was being sold at a discounted price of 100 ryo. A pack of 10 shuriken was also going for 100 ryo. The individual prices weren't particularly high, but considering that shinobi used and lost these tools regularly, the costs added up over time. Most shinobi preferred to buy them on a mission-to-mission basis, ensuring they had enough without overspending. After all, quality weapons could mean the difference between life and death. After searching for a while, Ren finally found a shop specializing in fuinjutsu items. Displayed on the shelves were various seals and scrolls, including explosion tags, storage scrolls, chakra draining seals, and paralysis seals, among others. Even though Ren hadn't attempted anything beyond explosion and storage seals yet, he was confident that with his fuijutsu talent, he could successfully create the others with some practice. As he approached, the shopkeeper, a middle-aged man with sharp eyes, greeted him with enthusiasm. "Hey, kid. Looking to buy some seals? We have everything you need, even the highest grade training seals. Whatever you're looking for, you'll find it here." Chapter 43, Young Masters Sell Seals. Instead of answering the shopkeeper, Ren silently surveyed the seals displayed in the shop. His first thought was immediate: the explosion tags he made were definitely better than the ones being sold here. Even the paper on which they were made seemed of a lower quality than the one he used while making them. Without much reaction, he asked, "How much for an explosion tag?" The shopkeeper's smile widened as he responded, "Oh, the explosion tag. Well, you look like a little genius, graduating so early, eh? So I'll give you one for 490 ryo, and if you buy 10, I'll round them up for 4,800. How about it?" Ren didn't respond. Instead, he picked up a storage scroll and asked again, "This one?" The shopkeeper's smile remained, as he replied, "That one's a fixed price of 3,000 ryo. No discounts on storage scrolls." Ren nodded as if considering it, then asked, "How much do you buy them for?" The moment those words left Ren's mouth, the shopkeeper's smile stiffened. However, after a brief pause, he still answered, "You want to sell seals?" Without waiting for Ren's reply, he continued, "Well, even if you did, I wouldn't be able to buy them. The village controls all fuinjutsu trades. See this?" He pointed to a small inscription on the bottom left corner of the shop's sign, where it read "Hidden Leaf Village Certified Dealer." The village buys the seals directly from the makers first, then distributes them to us certified dealers. Only after that can we sell fuinjutsu items to the public. As part of this system, we aren't allowed to buy from independent sellers. Ren nodded thoughtfully, absorbing the information. Without another word, he turned and left the marketplace, heading home. If he had to sell his fuinjutsu seals to the village anyway, then he might as well do it through his father, who worked under the Jonin commander. If he provided high-quality seals, it could even help his father secure a promotion on the job if he made some under-the-table deals. It was unlikely, but it's not like his father was working with someone too high up the ladder, right? If his father had high enough standing in the village, then Ren would also be able to run around without much problems. By the time Ren reached home, he headed straight for the bath. Sitting in the warm water, he opened his mastery panel and checked the 3 new masteries he had been developing over the past month. Chakra Enhancement Mastery -40%, Basic, Fuinjutsu Mastery -18%, Beginner, Yang Release Mastery -15%, Beginner. His Chakra Enhancement Mastery had improved the fastest, likely because of his already advanced chakra control. Now he could enhance eyes, ears and nose. The tongue was proving a little tricky because if he ate something with his tongue enhanced, the flavors become too strong, which breaks his focus. However, his fuinjutsu mastery was progressing more slowly than expected. This was partly due to the distractions of working on his storage belt and developing enhanced explosion tags, which he hadn't even tested yet. Ren figured that once he started learning more advanced seals, his mastery would increase at a much faster rate. However, the real problem was his Yang Release mastery. Despite dedicating an entire clone to Yang Release training and having 9 clones working on fuinjutsu, which required Yang Release, for almost a whole month, the mastery increase was still much slower than expected. Then again, this wasn't surprising. Even with 15% mastery, Ren had yet to gain any real understanding of Yang Release. It still felt like an abstract concept to him. The only thing he knew was that it had something to do with life energy. Well, Yin and Yang Release were always considered the most complex in the Naruto world. Still, he had a plan. Once his mastery reached intermediate level, he would dump his saved-up mastery points into it for an instant boost. One possible way to increase his Yang Release mastery was by learning medical ninjutsu. However, this was incredibly difficult in Hidden Leaf Village. There was an entire system in place for med ninjas. First, they had to complete compulsory medical education. Then, they had to intern at the Hidden Leaf Village Hospital for a set period. Finally, only after receiving approval from a senior med ninja could they begin learning medical ninjutsu. The only way to skip this process was to become a personal apprentice to a senior medical ninja. Ren didn't want to go through Hidden Leaf Village's medical program, but he remembered something his sensei had said. Uekata had already mentioned that all three of them would be required to learn basic medical ninjutsu just because they were members of his team. However, he was adamant about training them all at the same time, so Ren would have to wait until Yujao and Hitoshi reached his required level, which would be soon, since although their chakra control was enough for water walking, Uekata had higher requirements, so they also worked to improve their chakra control. Ren had a hunch that waiting for Uekata's personal training would be much better than going through Hidden Leaf Village's medical program. For now, he would just have to be patient. He wanted to read some medical books in the meantime, but he couldn't find the time to do so. After finishing his bath, Ren headed to the kitchen and began preparing dinner. Just as he was finishing up, Juichi returned home. He glanced at Ren cooking and casually remarked, "You should have waited, I would have cooked." Ren simply shrugged and replied, "Don't worry about it." Juichi hummed in response and headed to take a bath while Ren set the table. By the time dinner was ready, Juichi had returned, and they sat down to eat together. After dinner, Ren reached into his storage belt and pulled out a stack of explosion tags along with a storage scroll, handing them to his father. "I've been learning Fuinjutsu for a month and made these." Juichi, however, didn't even glance at the seals. Instead, his gaze immediately locked onto the storage belt. "Forget those," he said, pointing at the belt. "You made this?" Ren grinned proudly and posed, showing off his belt. "Yeah. It was tough getting the space symbols to fit within the belt's area, but I managed." Before he could bask in his achievement any longer, Juichi bonked him on the head. "Stop grinning like an idiot." Rubbing his head, Ren pouted as Juichi continued, "You see this?" He pointed to the ninja tool pouch strapped to his leg. "This is also a storage bag, and it probably holds a lot more than your belt. So quit acting like you reinvented Fuinjutsu." Ren's excitement dimmed slightly, but Juichi's next words made up for it. "I was just surprised you could already make something like that." His father's casual acknowledgement meant more than any praise. "Uekata gave you a book?" Ren nodded. "You're going to be busy with that for a while, but when you finish, let me know. I'll get you the second volume." Ren's eyebrows raised. "That's only the first volume?" Juichi nodded. "Yeah, there are 3 in total. The second book alone can get you to the 3rd level." "3rd level?" Ren frowned. There wasn't anything like that in the book. "Of course not. The book is written by someone who was obsessed with Fuinjutsu, so they wouldn't include something trivial like this." Juichi explained. Fuinjutsu users are divided into 6 levels. Most villages have many level 5 Fuinjutsu masters, however there are barely 15 level 6 Fuinjutsu masters in the entire shinobi world, and 5 of them belong to Hidden Leaf Village. Ren noticed the unmistakable pride in his father's tone, but Juichi didn't elaborate further. Instead, he glanced at the seals on the table. "So, did you want something, or were you just showing off?" Ren nodded. "Yeah, I learned that Fuinjutsu items can only be sold through the village. I figured I'd ask you to sell them. If they like the quality, maybe they'll even give you a promotion for having a great son." He grinned mischievously. Juichi coughed, rolling his eyes. "Don't worry about my promotion, brat. But rest assured, I'll sell them. Give me everything you've got." He patted his chest confidently with his single arm. Ren nodded and pulled out 4 more stacks of explosion tags along with 9 additional storage scrolls. In total, he had given Juichi 250 explosion tags and 10 storage scrolls. By Ren's estimation, considering the prices he saw at the shinobi market, this batch alone would be worth around 130,000 ryo. Juichi didn't even bat an eye as he stored them away, already used to handling such things. Ren then asked, "Can you get me more materials for making seals with the money you get from selling these?" "Don't worry about that," Juichi assured him. "Once you start officially dealing with the village, they'll provide you materials and deduct the cost from the price they buy at." He then asked, "Do you want the money now, or should I put it in the bank?" Ren thought about it for a moment. Hidden Leaf Village had banks, just like his previous world. He was surprised when he first learned about them, but it made sense. The banks were all village-backed, used only for storage and withdrawals, with minimal interest. With Hiruz and Saratobi overseeing the village's finances, Ren wasn't worried about corruption unless the old man himself was in on it, which was unlikely. "Yeah, just put it in the bank," he decided. "I have enough from missions to cover any expenses for now." Juichi nodded in approval, then stood up, stretching. "All right then. Get some sleep." Both father and son headed to their rooms for the night. As the morning sun rose over Hidden Leaf Village, the village slowly stirred to life. People began waking up, stepping out of their homes, and heading off to work. In the heart of the village, where the Hokage building stood tall, shinobi moved in and out with their usual urgency, carrying out their daily duties. At the topmost floor of the building, where the office of the Hokage was located, a man strode down the hallway. As he reached the doors leading into the office of Hidden Leaf Village's strongest shinobi, he slammed them open without hesitation. Chapter 44, There are benefits of having connections to the highest authority inside the Hokage's office. The third Hokage sat behind his desk, speaking with a young shinobi whose silver hair and covered face made him resemble a scarecrow. Their conversation was interrupted by the loud slam of the door, but while the Hokage remained unfazed, the young shinobi immediately tensed, shifting into a defensive stance. Before he could react further, an arm suddenly slung around his shoulders, pulling him into a tight hold. A familiar voice followed, full of laughter and mischief. "Kakashi, you brat. I told you to come see me, but you never do. How come, huh? Well, now that I've caught you, don't even think about running. Stay here till I'm done, and then we'll talk." The silver-haired boy, Kakashi Hatake, sighed in his usual deadpan tone. "I was busy with missions, Juichi-san." Yeah, whatever." Juichi Takahashi waved him off, clearly not buying the excuse. With a grin, he pulled out a stack of explosion tags and thumped them against Kakashi's chest. "Here, these were made by my son. Try them out when you're in the field, they're great," he boasted with a laugh. Hiruzen let out a weary sigh, shaking his head. "You're starting to remind me of Tsuna more than your own sensei, Juichi." Juichi didn't miss a beat. "Old man, you liked me just fine when I was young and acted like this. What happened now?" Hiruzen's expression darkened slightly as he replied sternly, "Because you are not at an age where this behavior is appropriate anymore. You have a son now, Juichi. Why don't you try acting like a mature adult?" Juichi, completely ignoring the Hokage's words, took a seat and casually bound Kakashi's legs with his own, effectively trapping him. He then pulled out the explosion tags and storage scrolls that Ren had given him, placing them on the desk with a smug grin. "Look at these, my son made them. And get this, he even made a storage belt. You know how long it took him? Only a month." He laughed proudly. Hiruzen's frown deepened at Juichi's blatant disregard for his lecture, but after a moment, he let out a sigh and picked up the tags and scrolls, inspecting them carefully. "The quality is quite good, and the compression of space in the storage seals is handled well." The Hokage nodded in approval before casting a glance at Juichi. "It seems young Ren has real talent in this field, unlike you, who had explosion tags blowing up in your face even after a whole year of training." Juichi scowled while the Hokage let out a light chuckle before continuing. "Does he want to sell them?" "Yeah," Juichi nodded. "He went to the market and learned about the Fuinjutsu system. Looks like he ran out of materials and had too many seals stocked up, so he figured he'd sell them. Otherwise, he wouldn't bother with money." Hiruzen nodded thoughtfully, then placed the seals aside. "I'll have Shikaku handle it. Go talk to him." Juichi nodded as if he had expected that response and asked, "Shikaku is handling the Fuinjutsu department too?" Hiruzen sighed, rubbing his temple. "Yes. I originally wanted Utakata to oversee it, but he's already too busy managing the medical department in place of both Koharu and Tsunade. Plus, with his team's duties as the first dispatch squad, I didn't want to add more to his plate." He then turned his gaze toward Kakashi, who was still held captive by Juichi's firm grip. "Kakashi-kun, reach level 5 soon, and I'll have you take over the Fuinjutsu department." Kakashi, still trapped, simply nodded in resignation. After a while, Juichi finished his conversation with the Hokage, then dragged Kakashi out of the office, despite the younger shinobi's visible reluctance. Hiruzen watched them leave with a small smile, then turned to the Anbu standing quietly in the shadows. "Deliver these to Shikaku, and inform him about young Ren," he instructed, gesturing to the seals and scrolls. "Tell him to make the conditions lighter. After all, the boy won't have much time to focus on Fuinjutsu for now." The Anbu silently nodded before flickering away. Left alone in his office, Hiruzen turned to the large windows that overlooked the village. With a soft sigh, he gazed at the bustling streets below and murmured, "The future looks promising, sensei. Am I doing a good job handling the village?" While this was happening, Ren was with his team. Team 1 had just finished their teamwork training and was now sitting in a half circle on the grass, catching their breath. Utakata stood in front of them, arms crossed, and announced, "You are dismissed for today. I have an urgent task from the village. Treat this as a free day. We will continue tomorrow at 8 a.m. With that, he flickered away, leaving the three Genin exchanging glances. This was the first time in a month since their team's formation that Yudakata had given them a day off. Seeing an opportunity, Ren suggested, "Want to get some dango?" Since they had free time and had just finished training, eating was naturally the best next step. Yujao and Hitoshi agreed without hesitation, and the three of them made their way to the dango shop. At the dango shop, due to it being midday, the shop wasn't too crowded. The three geinin sat at one of the outdoor tables, enjoying their dango in comfortable silence until suddenly, the peace was shattered by a loud shout. "Hey, Speedo!" Ren's lips twitched in irritation as he recognized the voice. He lifted his gaze to see Eiji Nakamura, his friend and former academy seatmate, charging toward him, waving enthusiastically. Behind Eiji, two other figures followed: Shin Saratobi and Akemi Hyuga, his teammates from Team 2. At the sight of them, Yujao turned toward Ren with a slight smile. "Your friend is waving at you," she remarked. "Shouldn't you respond?" Ren ignored both Eiji and Yujao, casually continuing to eat his dango. Eiji, completely unfazed by Ren's indifference, appeared in front of them in an instant, dragging his two teammates along. "Oh man, it's been a month since we saw each other," he said, grinning, before casually swiping a dango stick from Ren's plate. Ren scowled, glaring at him. "I see you're still a thief." He said this but made no move to take back the dango. "Yep," proudly, Eiji shot back with a wide grin, completely unapologetic. Yujao chuckled, while Hitoshi simply adjusted his sunglasses and continued eating. "Hey guys, long time no see," Eiji greeted them all, including Yujao and Hitoshi. Since all six of them had been in the same class at the academy, there was a natural sense of familiarity, and they returned the greeting. Team 2 ordered their own dango and sat down at the table opposite Team 1. The first to speak was Shin Saratobi, who let out a sigh and looked at Ren. "How did you deal with him being so talkative?" he asked, nodding toward Eiji. Akemi also added, "And very loud too." Ren chuckled, "Just treat it like background noise, it helps improve your focus." Shin and Akemi nodded gravely, as if he had just imparted great wisdom, while Eiji let out a disgruntled "hey," only to be completely ignored. After finishing a skewer, Yujao leaned forward and asked, "How many missions have you guys completed?" Eiji's shoulders slumped, and his grin faded. "Just D-rank missions," he admitted. "Our sensei says we aren't ready for a C rank yet, so we mostly train all day. We got a day off today because of some urgent task." Yujao's eyes narrowed slightly. "Your sensei dismissed you for the day?" Yudakata-sensei did the same thing. This time, Akemi spoke up. "Then it must be because of the performance review meeting." Ren glanced at her as she continued, "It's a meeting they hold after a month of team formation. My father said it's done to evaluate the progress of each team. If any team is performing poorly, the village decides how to handle it, whether to offer additional training, reassign members, or, in the worst case, dissolve the team." Ren noticed that Akemi wore her headband on her neck, prominently displaying her forehead, a clear indication that she was from the main branch of the Hyuga clan. Hitoshi confirmed her words, "Yes, I remember my father mentioning it too." Now, both teams understood the reason behind their sudden day off. However, none of the six were worried. Their performance had been strong, and they knew they had nothing to fear. As the six of them continued eating, their conversation flowed naturally, though most of the talking was initiated by Eiji and Shin. Ren, Yujao, Hitoshi, and Akemi were generally the quiet type, with Hitoshi being the most silent of all. They only spoke when asked something, listening more than they contributed. As they were finishing their food, Eiji suddenly turned to Ren with a familiar grin and asked, "Hey, you wanna have a spar?" Ren glanced at Eiji's level 31. He compared it to his own level 43. There would be no challenge at all, but since Eiji always challenged him whenever possible, he decided to accept anyway. "Sure," Ren said with a slight nod. At the same time, he noted something interesting: Yujao, Hitoshi, and Eiji all had the same level 31. Meanwhile, Akemi was at level 25, and Shin was at level 22, making him the weakest of the six. Ren turned to Yujao and Hitoshi and asked, "You guys wanna come with us?" Hitoshi nodded silently, agreeing to come along, but Yujao shook her head. "No," she said. "My mother wanted my help with some work, but I couldn't because of training. Since I'm free now, I might as well go." Ren nodded in understanding and didn't press further. He then turned to Eiji, who was speaking with his teammates. Both Akemi and Shin shook their heads, choosing not to join. With that settled, the three who weren't coming, Yujao, Akemi, and Shin left first, heading in their own directions. Just as Ren, Eiji, and Hitoshi were about to leave, a boy with black hair and onyx eyes entered Ren's field of vision. Chapter 45, Ballbreaker, enemy of the non-existent Uchiha's future. Bonus, Itachi Uchiha was on his way to his favorite dango shop, looking forward to enjoying his favorite snack, when he noticed three familiar figures standing outside the shop. Recognizing them as his former academy classmates, he did what any polite boy would do and greeted them. Ren-san, Eiji-san, Hitoshi-san. Ren turned to him and responded casually, "Hey, Itachi." Eiji, as energetic as always, grinned and waved. Hee. Hitoshi, in his usual quiet manner, simply acknowledged him with him. Ren glanced at Itachi and asked, "Is it your day off too?" Itachi shook his head. "No, our team doesn't have a fixed schedule. We only gather when there's a mission, so we're free to do what we want." Ren had a feeling that Itachi was being somewhat excluded from his team. He had seen the scene in the anime where Itachi was being hated by his team leader for being stronger than him, so there might be some tensions between the team, but he chose not to comment on it. Instead, he extended an invitation. "You want to come with us? We were going to spar." Ren glanced at level 49 on top of Itachi and thought, he is just a step away from Jonin level. However, Ren didn't believe the level completely. After all, his own level was level 43, which was due to his lowest stat being 43. So it is to be noted that Itachi's lowest stat, whichever it might be, was 49, so his other stats would be all in Jonin level. He looked at Eiji and Hitoshi to check if they had any objections. Seeing none, he continued, "It's been more than a year since we last fought. It'll be good." Itachi seemed conflicted, his gaze shifting between Ren and the dango shop. Ren noticed this and said, "Why don't you eat first? We already had our fill. You can meet us at Training Ground 1 when you're done." Itachi sighed in relief and gave a small nod. "Okay, I'll meet you there soon." With that, Ren, Eiji, and Hitoshi left for Training Ground 1. On the way to the training ground, Ren checked his stats. Status panel, name, Ren Takahashi, level, 43, health points, 5,800, chakra points, 5,600, attribute, strength, 43, 41 plus 2, agility, 52, 49 plus 3, intelligence, 52, 50 plus 2, vitality, 58, 54 plus 3 plus 1, chakra, 56, 54 plus 1, available points, 0, talents, improved chakra control, enhanced reflexes, Ganjutsu resistance, A rank, Fuinjutsu, major talent, mastery panel, chakra control, 79%, advanced, fast fist taijutsu, 85%, advanced, shuriken jutsu, 88%, advanced, shadow clone mastery, 80%, advanced, wind style mastery, 76%, advanced, earth style mastery, 73%, intermediate, chakra enhancement mastery, 40%, basic, Fuinjutsu mastery, 18%, beginner, yang release mastery, 15%, beginner, mastery points, 3 intermediate level points, 3 advanced level points, ninja panel, ninjutsu, 54 out of 100, taijutsu, 49 out of 100, ganjutsu, 13 out of 100, fuinjutsu, 18 out of 100, because he added points to vitality whenever he got them, and since he was also growing as time passes, his vitality was his highest stat. This also helped him in continuously increase high strength and agility. He also noted that the Fuinjutsu in the ninja panel represented his Fuinjutsu mastery, so the other 3 should also be the same. It was however regrettable that he couldn't increase the items in ninja panel with points, but even if could, he didn't have any points to spare, so he would make do like this. Overall, he was satisfied with how his power was increasing. He wasn't in a rush to increase his level like a madman, since there wasn't any life-threatening event right now, and he was pretty sure that by the time major events occur, his strength would be enough to survive them. With that, he closed the system and rushed, not knowing the kind of flag he raised by thinking he didn't need to rush for power. Since it was an exclusive training ground assigned to Team 1, no other teams were allowed to train there without prior approval. As expected, the ground was empty. Upon arrival, Eiji turned to Ren and asked, "So, how do we do this? You want to fight Itachi, right?" Ren nodded. Eiji shrugged. "I don't have any particular interest in fighting him. What about you?" he asked, turning to Hitoshi. Hitoshi also shook his head. "There isn't much difference between Itachi and Ren, and I can spar with Ren anytime I want." Ren thought for a moment before suggesting, "Alright, then. First, I'll fight Eiji. Then, I'll go against Itachi. Lastly, you two can fight each other." Both of them nodded in agreement. Hitoshi moved away to observe while Ren and Eiji stepped into the training area, standing opposite each other. Ren picked up a small rock and held it up. "Everything goes, right?" Eiji cracked his knuckles and nodded. "Yep." Ren tossed the rock into the air. As soon as the rock hit the ground, Eiji exploded forward, charging straight at Ren. His fist came flying, aimed directly at Ren's face, but Ren tilted his head slightly, letting the punch pass right by. Without missing a beat, Eiji swung his other fist, trying to catch Ren on the recoil. This time, Ren simply raised his arm and deflected the strike with ease, his feet barely shifting from their position. AG gritted his teeth and pressed forward, throwing a rapid barrage of punches and kicks, but every attack was either dodged, blocked, or redirected effortlessly. Ren's movements were smooth, precise, almost lazy, as if he were merely brushing aside an annoying insect. Annoyed by Ren's lack of reaction, AG increased his speed, trying to catch him off guard. He feinted with a right hook before twisting his body into a powerful spinning kick, aiming for Ren's ribs. Ren finally moved. Just as AG's kick was about to connect, Ren leaned back slightly, dodging it by mere inches. His left hand shot up, gripping AG's ankle mid-spin before casually shoving him away. AG stumbled back, his frustration growing. "You're still too slow," Ren remarked with a slight smirk. AG let out a small huff, but instead of backing down, he charged in again. As their hand-to-hand battle continued, AG suddenly formed two hand seals in the middle of a punch, catching Ren by surprise. Fire style, fireball jutsu. A massive fireball erupted from AG's mouth, roaring toward Ren with intense heat. But even before the flames could fully form, Ren was already gone. In the next instant, AG felt a chill run down his spine. A hand gently touched the back of his neck. Ren was standing behind him, completely unscathed, his palm hovering just inches from delivering a decisive blow. The fight was over. AG let out a deep breath, shaking his head. "Oh man, I lost before I could even use everything I had." Ren shrugged. "Then you should improve. You can't expect your enemy to wait until you've used all your strength while he just sits there like a duck. If you had other things like explosion tags or barbed wires, I'd be forced to move more frequently, giving you more chances to attack. Of course, I'd counterattack, but if you create more openings, you might land an unexpected strike that could change the flow of the fight." AG nodded, taking Ren's words to heart. Without another word, Ren reached into his storage belt and tossed a stack of explosion tags at AG. "Here, keep these. I made them." AG caught the tags, glanced at them briefly, then pocketed them without hesitation. He knew his financial situation well. There was no way he could afford this many tags on his own. There was no point in pretending otherwise. Ren smiled slightly, satisfied. He had expected AG to try and refuse, but if he had, Ren would have forced him to take them anyway. He didn't offer the tags to Yu Zhao or Hitoshi because they had family and clan support, but AG wasn't as fortunate. Ren didn't mind helping him out since he was a friend. By the time the fight had ended, Itachi had already arrived and was quietly waiting on the sidelines. AG stepped out of the makeshift arena as Ren turned to Itachi and called out, "You ready?" Itachi nodded. He knew Ren wouldn't be tired from fighting AG after all, he wouldn't be either. Without any further words, Itachi flickered into the ring. "Everything goes?" he asked. Ren nodded, picked up another rock, and tossed it into the air. As soon as the rock touched the ground, Ren and Itachi blurred forward, closing the distance between them in an instant. Their fists and feet clashed at high speed, the sound of impact ringing through the training ground. They moved like shadows, each attack countered with precise efficiency. Ren was faster, just slightly, but Itachi compensated with impeccable timing and fluid counters. Realizing the fight wasn't going in his favor, Itachi shifted his strategy. Instead of focusing on speed, he started putting more power behind his strikes. Each punch carried more force, forcing Ren to meet his blows directly. However, even with the increased power, Ren kept up without much trouble. His enhanced reflexes allowed him to weave through the attacks, barely slipping out of harm's way each time. Then, an opening came. Ren closed the distance, stepping into Itachi's guard and striking his stomach with a clean, powerful punch. Clang! A sharp metallic sound echoed as Itachi blocked Ren's follow-up at the last second. Ren's claws had emerged mid-strike, about to pierce through Itachi's gut, but the Uchiha's kunai intercepted them just in time. Their eyes met, both registering the near hit before they instinctively jumped back, creating a short distance between them. A tense pause, and then they rushed at each other again. This time, Ren was even faster, his movements sharper, more precise. Itachi, in turn, hit even harder, his blows carrying enough force to shatter bones if they connected cleanly. The two engaged at extreme proximity, their movements so tightly packed that dodging became almost impossible. Ren relied on his reflexes, narrowly avoiding each hit, but Itachi wasn't as fortunate. Small, thin cuts appeared on his arms and torso where he failed to completely evade Ren's claws. He gritted his teeth, his dark eyes narrowing in concentration. Then, as if frustrated by Ren's speed, Itachi suddenly launched a punch with everything he had. For the first time in the fight, Ren felt genuine danger. The punch was strong, too strong. Instead of dodging sideways, Ren made a split-second decision. Channeling a high amount of chakra to his legs, he fixed himself to the ground, bending his upper body backward. The punch missed barely. It whistled past his nose, the sheer force creating a gust of wind that blew his hair back. But Ren had already countered. His body twisted sideways, his upper body snapping back into place. With all the force he could muster, he launched a punch straight towards Itachi's balls. Chapter 46, title removed due to inappropriateness of the words used by the author. Itachi reacted instantly. Just as Ren's punch was about to land in the most unfortunate place possible, Itachi's hand shot down, forcefully pushing Ren's fist toward the ground. Boom. The impact cracked the earth beneath them, small pieces of stone and dirt flying up from the sheer force. Ren straightened, flexing his fingers as he stood up, while Itachi took a step back, his gaze flickering between the damaged ground and Ren. For a brief moment, Ren was sure he saw a flash of red in Itachi's eyes, but it disappeared in an instant. He was disappointed that he couldn't force Itachi to awaken his Sharingan but let go. Ren cleared his throat, breaking the tense silence. Well, I guess that's enough for today, right? Itachi nodded, his expression unreadable. With that, Eiji and Hitoshi stepped forward for their match. By now, Eiji had mostly recovered from his earlier fight with Ren, so he was ready to go up against Hitoshi without much issue. The two of them shared similar strengths, and even their affinities were the same, both were fire-style users. However, Hitoshi had an additional edge with his insects. Even though his bugs weren't particularly combat-oriented yet, they still proved to be a crucial distraction. Eiji did his best to counter them, but the moment he hesitated for just a second to deal with a swarm heading for his back, Hitoshi capitalized on the opening and took the win. Eiji groaned as he sat up. Man, your bugs are so annoying. They're like that stupid wind clone of his, he muttered, pointing at Ren. Ren recalled how his wind clone had frustrated Eiji in past fights. Hitoshi merely adjusted his glasses, offering no response. Since they were done for the day, the four of them left the training ground together. As they walked through the village, Itachi was the first to separate, heading toward the Uchiha compound, which had been relocated to the village's edge after the Nine Tails incident. A little further ahead, Eiji peeled off as well, heading to the village-provided apartments. That left Ren and Hitoshi walking side by side. When they reached the Aburame compound, Hitoshi suddenly invited him inside. Ren was about to consider it until he heard strange buzzing sounds coming from within. He had no idea what was happening inside, but he was definitely not curious enough to find out. Maybe another time, Ren said, waving Hitoshi off. Hitoshi simply nodded and entered the compound without another word. Now alone, Ren wandered aimlessly through the village. For the first time in a while, he had nothing to do. No team activities, no motivation for training, and nothing urgent to occupy his time. For once, he actually felt bored. Since he didn't have anything else to do, Ren pulled out his Fuinjutsu book and began flipping through the symbols as he walked through the village streets. He was already familiar with the basic ones, so he decided to study the more advanced, branched-out symbols. One symbol caught his eye, the spin symbol, which could make objects rotate. Then, there were three symbols that had similar functions but varied in intensity. Sip, which took the lowest amount of chakra. Suck, which absorbed more chakra than sip, and drain, which emptied the target completely. These were commonly used in chakra suction seals, especially for suppressing prisoners. Ren stared at suction symbols in the book and stopped in the middle of the road. He turned around and immediately headed home. As soon as he arrived home, he went straight to the basement, grabbed some Fuinjutsu papers and ink from one of his clones without saying a word, and sat down to work. He carefully drew the drain symbol on a Fuinjutsu paper, placed it on the ground, and then fired an E-rank air bullet at it. Nothing happened. The jutsu dissipated without any reaction from the seal. Frowning, Ren tried the sip and suck symbols next. Still, nothing. Flipping through the book once again, his gaze landed on the spin symbol. His eyes widened as a realization struck him. Without hesitation, he grabbed another sheet and carefully inscribed the spin symbol. This time, when he fired another air bullet at it, the jutsu reacted. It spun slightly before dissipating. Ren burst into laughter. This can work. Excited, he pulled out an empty Fuinjutsu scroll and began working on a new seal. He drew two spin symbols at the center of the scroll. Then, he extended a sip symbol from the end of each spin symbol. At the farthest end, he placed a large suck symbol, and at last, to stabilize the seal, he inscribed several hold symbols around the sip symbols. Once he was done, he placed the scroll on the floor and fired another air bullet at the center. This time, as soon as the jutsu hit the scroll, it began spinning violently. The sip symbols activated first, siphoning a small amount of chakra, and then the suck symbol at the end pulled in all the remaining chakra, completely absorbing the jutsu, and then a little chakra dissipated from the suck symbol, which was its function, to suck the chakra and release it back. Ren let out a hearty laugh. It actually worked. When he saw the suction symbols in the book, he remembered the confrontation between Jiraiya and Itachi, where Jiraiya had sealed away the Amaterasu attack by Itachi. If he remembered right, that was a fire sealing scroll which could seal away the fire-style jutsus. So if the idea he had worked, which it did, then could suck the chakra from the jutsu and dissipate it. However, there was a problem that the suction symbols could not directly interact with chakra. It needed some medium through which it could interact with chakra, and this was done by the spin symbol. The spin symbol could interact with the chakra flow of the jutsu first. So, by creating a vortex-like effect using the spin symbols, the sip symbols would slowly siphon the chakra, and the suck symbol would pull in the rest, sealing it completely. However, he quickly realized the flaws in his design. The scroll had to be positioned perfectly so that the jutsu always hit the spin symbol first, which wasn't practical in battle. The seal's effectiveness was limited to lower-level jutsu. It wouldn't work on a high-powered technique yet. Even now, as he checked the scroll, the sip symbols looked off, which means that chakra had not stabilized properly inside the seal even with so many hold symbols. Lastly, drawing the seal required extreme concentration. If his control over yang chakra slipped even slightly, the entire scroll would be ruined. Even so, he was satisfied. When he first had the idea, he couldn't focus on anything else. If the seal had failed, he would have been extremely disappointed. But now, looking at the successfully drawn scroll, he was genuinely excited. Ren looked up from the scroll and opened his mastery panel, only to be greeted by an unexpected system notification. INT+2, INT, 53, his eyes flickered to his Fuinjutsu mastery level, and what he saw left him stunned. Fuinjutsu mastery, 18%, beginner, 28%, basic, a whole 10% increase in one go. This was the biggest boost he had ever seen for any mastery skill. Not to mention, he had also gained 2 points in intelligence. Ren glanced back at the scroll, realizing something important. Creating new seals from scratch without instructions increases my mastery much more than simply practicing the existing ones from the book. It made sense now. Fuinjutsu wasn't just about rote memorization or copy-pasting symbols. It required imagination, applied thinking, and the ability to create solutions on the spot. If I want to master Fuinjutsu faster, I need to experiment more, not just follow a book like a government employee. He also thought about the Fuinjutsu talent he had received from the system. It's much better than I originally thought. If I didn't have it, there's no way I would have succeeded in creating a working seal on my first try. With this in mind, Ren dispelled all his Fuinjutsu clones and recreated them, this time assigning them a new task to refine and improve the suction seal. As for himself, he picked up a blank scroll and a brush and got back to work. After all, this was way more productive than wandering around the village out of boredom. Team 1 continued their usual schedule of daily training and missions. They completed D-rank missions every day and a C-rank mission once a week. So far, their C-rank missions had been uneventful. One was a simple guarding job, and the other was a carrier task. Not a single instance of combat had occurred during these missions. It was just another routine afternoon for Team 1 as they began their individual training. Yujao was sitting with a clone of Utakata, going through a sword skill scroll that their sensei had given her. Hitoshi was running laps around the training ground, increasing the level of his training seal after each round. Ren and Utakata stood opposite each other, ready to engage in their daily spar. Just as they were about to begin, a sharp eagle cry echoed through the air. All of them instinctively looked up, spotting an eagle soaring overhead. It circled the area once before heading toward the village gates. Before the Gainins could even lower their heads, they heard, "To the gates, now." Utakata's voice was sharp. Then without hesitation, Team 1 flickered away. Chapter 47, Face Slappings. A bitch tamed by some son of a bitch. As soon as Team 1 reached the gates, Utakata walked straight toward the gate guard, who had an eagle perched on his shoulder and was reading a message. The guard finished reading, handed the note to Utakata, and pulled out what looked like a mission deployment form. Utakata skimmed through the note quickly, handed it back, and then signaled his team to follow him out of the gate. Without a word, Team 1 rushed into the forest, moving eastward. As they traveled, Utakata finally spoke, his voice steady and neutral. Team Akira, led by Joan and Akira Hyuga, was deployed for border patrol near the sea, close to the land of waves. They had just made contact with the border patrol team when they had a brief skirmish with disguised enemy shinobi. However, the enemy retreated before the fight could escalate. Joan and Akira, a Hyuga Jonin, could have easily chased them and determined the enemy location. However, there was a chance that it was just a decoy unit planted to lure the two teams to the location where they had their allies, so they chose to prioritize retreating and relaying information to the village first. It is highly likely that the enemy shinobi were from the Hidden Cloud village. Our job is to establish contact with the two teams and then do a recon and eliminate the enemy as possible, otherwise retreat. The first dispatch squad have to rush towards any emergencies during a mission for any mission below S rank above which falls under the ANBU job profile.